And now Commissioner Walmack will deliver the invocation, then please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Madam Chair, as is my tradition here, when I lead the invocation, I want to use words that have been previously been used for historical purposes. I'd like to use the words from the 1981 inaugural address or invocation for President Ronald Reagan. Gracious God our Father, we need you today, maybe as never before. We have not lived up to our potential. We have seen our world from our own selfish point of view. We have lived as though everything depended upon us. We confess our sins and we seek your forgiveness. We pray for all who are in positions of leadership in this administration. May they measure well the shortness of time and the length of eternity. May they see all people and things from your point of view. Help us to stand proudly as American citizens and face every challenge with a confidence born of your Spirit and humbly touched by your love and grace. We commit ourselves to this end. We pray in the name of the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to make a couple of changes to the agenda. We have a couple of special guests. We have House 51 Representative Mike Stone. Is Representative Lewis with you?
He'll be about 5 minutes out. 10 minutes.
Okay. Can y'all put up the Charlie's clatter here?
Yeah.
So what I would like to do, the board will recall that at one of our January meetings, we had requested someone come, our House representative come and explain the redistricting process. And so we've got Representative Stone and the chairman of the redistricting committee. So they will be glad to answer any questions we have. And to respect their time, I would like to place them before the public comments.
Are you still there?
Still here. I'm just writing. And John, do you have any additional?
No, ma'am. Except to say that Senator Atwater did call and say he could not be here today.
Okay.
And I would just like to add that, as a tickler on that, that I did approach Senator Rucho based on the same comments that were made in the earlier meeting. And Senator Rucho said that we would need to submit it in writing, and he doubted with his busy schedule that he personally could come, but he sends his regrets.
Madam Chair, before you start at another item, I'd like to talk about the approval of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Item B, consent agenda, I'd like that taken out and put into new business.
Okay.
I'd like to discuss that if we could.
Okay. What's that? Item B in the consent agenda.
B is
We pull from the consent agenda and put under item D as new business.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
I move we remove item 5A from the agenda. We're here to conduct county business, and all of us have been trained in ethics, and all of us have conducted business under Robert's Rules of Order, and is amended by County Procedures Handbook. So if Mr. Clark would like to submit his comments in writing to either the chair, county attorney, coroner, or other can address his concerns.
Okay. Are there any other proposed changes to the agenda?
Would you repeat that? What was it? Let me see if I got the full grasp of what Mr. Park said.
Mr. Parks, will you repeat your agenda?
Madam Wright, they need to get up closer to the mic because they're breaking up on their back. I move we remove item 5A from the agenda. We're here to conduct county business. All of us have been trained in ethics, and all of us have conducted business under Robert's Rules of Order and is amended by County Procedures Handbook. So if Mr. Clark would like to submit his comments in writing to either the chair or the county attorney, one or the other can address his concerns. And I'll email that to
Gaynell?
the clerk, yes.
Okay.
Would that need to be a separate
Well, we are voting on agenda changes, so right now we have added the Representative Stone and Representative Lewis to the agenda, and it's been proposed that we remove item 5A.
Madam Chairman, I'm wondering, to save any confusion here, I support one but not the other. So how should I make that wish known and not to lump them together? I think that's maybe what Mr. Oldham was getting at.
I'd like to see us vote on each one separately.
Yeah, I would.
Okay, I'll be glad. So, first proposed agenda change was the addition of Representative Stone and Representative Lewis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes unanimously.
And Madam Chair, before you bring up the next matter, call to the board's attention Rule 10 of its Rules of Procedure.
Okay?
If the board does not have those, I will
Then
read.
you're gonna have to repeat it, because back in whoever's talking.
This is Mr. Talbert. Charlie,
Okay.
I wanted to call to the chair and the board's attention Rule 10 of your Rules of Procedure, and if the board members do not have that with them, I will read it with the chair's permission.
Please do.
Rule 10, informal public comment. Any citizen at any time may appear before the Board of Commissioners to have an item placed on the agenda for consideration by submitting the required forms to the clerk's office. A time limit of 10 minutes will be allowed for citizens to speak. Requests to appear before the board must be received in the clerk's office by 5 p.m. on Fridays, 6 working days prior to the meeting.
Okay, and that's for consideration, so it doesn't necessarily mean that it's automatically added to the agenda. Right?
It's already on the agenda.
Yeah, I would think if the appropriate forms were filled out and turned in, that's how he got here. And so I think for that reason, he'd be entitled to say his piece.
It would be entitled to be included on the agenda for consideration. I guess the question is, if a citizen wants to come, any citizen wants to come on any topic at any time for 15 minutes, for up to 15 minutes, then, or 10 minutes, I'm sorry, then I guess the point would be, is there not any screening, is there not any review of the request to see if it's meritorious, if it's prudent to have those requests considered?
That's directed to me,
Yeah.
Commissioner Womack. The language used in your rule is subject to both interpretations. It uses a permissive word, may appear. I was not here when this rule was adopted. I do not know the intent of the board, but certainly the remainder of the rule suggests the word may not have been used in the permissive. I do not know.
And Madam Chair, I would also just point out that we're all intelligent people here, and there are certain subjects which may be very productive, very useful for us to consider, and therefore would have merit in being added to the agenda. There are other subjects where we have requisite authority on our board that are personally and or professionally trained in those subjects. Robert's Rules of Order and ethics policy are subjects that I personally went to school with Mr. Talbert up at the School of Government when we were trained on that stuff. So I'm not so sure we need a layperson to come in and lecture us on those matters.
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Chairman Hayes.
I think it's in the eyes of the beholder, and I think what may be meritorious to Mr. Womack or may not be meritorious to him, I may find it entirely differently. I don't know that we are prohibited from voting on this, but it would be the first time in my recollection that we had denied anybody an opportunity when they had filed the appropriate paperwork to come before us and have their 10 minutes. It could be, you could extend this argument forever about different types of subjects that we may figure to a certain individual. That is not meritorious. But to me or someone else, it may be very meritorious. And so I think that we are, I think that Mr. Clark is entitled to make his presentation.
Well, and you will all find that there is a detailed handout of his presentation. And the fact that we have two guests here today to explain the redistricting process, the fact that we may have lots of questions, I would suggest to the board that the first time I had seen this is when it's here today. I would suggest that we all be able to take a chance or to read this and respond accordingly. And I would be glad to meet as the chairman with Mr. Clark and our county manager and our county attorney, and would be welcome to hear any comments that you have. But I think since he has submitted it in written form, and it's not technically a item of business that we're conducting today, I would ask that you consider that.
Madam Chair, I would go ahead, in the interest of getting this agenda agreed to so we can get out of here in a few hours. I would move that we strike, that per the suggestion of Commissioner Parks, that we strike 5A.
Let this come to a vote, please.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Commissioner Parks?
can you repeat that last? It's breaking up. I don't know, Kyle may have to redial me on this number.
Commissioner Womack made a motion that we strike item 5A for consideration on the agenda today. So we're going to vote on that.
Okay.
All those in favor say
Wait a
aye.
minute, wait just a moment. Would you, I'm sorry, madam, would you state what it is we're voting on now?
The motion is to amend the agenda by striking item 5A. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Nay?
Let me see the nays. One.
I wanted to ask why wasn't there discussion after a formal motion was put in?
Ed, don't let another commissioner tell you that you have to put your hand up. I'm sorry, people can decide how they're gonna vote on things.
Let's
Could we have a recount?
recount.
Does everybody have their instructions on how you're supposed to vote now?
You don't need to say that, Madam
Well, I
Chairman.
do.
No, there've been no instructions, just a simple question, did you vote? Because I didn't see a hand.
That's why I asked for the hands, because I couldn't tell from the voice vote, and there were 3 hands who raised nay. All those in favor of striking item 5A from the agenda, raise your hands.
I vote aye, and I can't raise my hand here.
Okay. All those voting nay, please raise your hand. 4. So motion fails, the item will be included.
Here's a question I wanted to ask in discussion that we didn't have, was, since Mr. Clark is not invisible, he's here, do you have recommendations for us, or is this just to cover all the territory in the policy?
No, sir, I have specific recommendations
All right,
that will be delivered professionally.
all right.
Okay.
Madam Chair, my yea vote was because Mr. Clark followed all the procedures that he was instructed to follow. And
That's not correct, Al.
What, Commissioner Parks?
That's not correct. As it says, it's supposed to submit specific information which allows the board to consider the matter, and all he did was submit what we already have in our procedures book, or at least that's what I got.
Well, I agree with you because I saw this for the first time, but I'll let the vote stand and this will remain in the agenda. Now we need to approve the amended agenda, which is the addition of the redistricting.
We have one more adjustment, Madam Chair. We have to approve Doc's recommendation to move item 2B down to new business.
Well, I'll approve the agenda first and then we'll approve the consent agenda as amended.
Oh, okay.
Right?
All right, whatever.
Okay. All those in favor of the amended agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. Now then, the consent agenda, it has been requested that item B be moved to new business. And so, the item D under new business. All those in favor of the consent agenda as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay. We have 2 guests here today, and Representative Stone and Representative David Lewis. For those of you that don't know Representative Lewis, he's from Harnett County. He is the chairman of the redistricting committee. So, Representative Stone, we'll let you.
Yes, I'd like to thank Madam Chair today for giving us this opportunity to come before the commission to explain redistricting, especially for House 51. I know that several of the commissioners had some questions. All I can really tell you is that I voted for it. It's pending litigation, so there's not a lot I can say other than I did vote for it. And the outcome's gonna give House 51 now in Lee County and Harney County 2 House of Representatives. In the past year, I've worked in Raleigh very hard with Representative Lewis, who has the other part of Harney County, and it's been very successful. We work together as a team to help make Harney County a better place to live and thrive. So a lot of questions have come. I thought it was sufficient for me to bring you the person who can give you the best information, the most detailed information of how this process works. And I will tell you, I went to several of those meetings. It's very, very tedious. There's a lot of work that goes into redistricting, and that's why it comes up every 10 years. It's so tough decisions to be made. At this time, if you would, I'd like to bring Representative Lewis, who is the chairman of the redistricting committee for the state of North Carolina, and I just commend him for such a great job. Thank you.
Welcome to Lee County.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you so much for the opportunity and the privilege to stand before you today. I've learned in my tenure in politics that the way to make sure at least 2 people in the room aren't bored is to start with questions. So, with your permission, Madam Chair, I'd like to continue that practice, and I will be glad at your direction to outline the entire redistricting process, which has taken about 12 months. Or I'll be glad to talk about Lee County, districts 51 and 54 in particular. I'll be glad to speak about the state Senate if you'd like, or I'll be glad to speak about the congressional plan. But I am at your disposal, ma'am.
I will let my colleagues make that choice. I know several of you had questions. Does anybody have any specific questions you want to direct to Representative Lewis?
I have a question. Thank you, sir, first off, for coming today. I'm absolutely humbled the fact that you could carve out that kind of time to come down and address us, and I sincerely appreciate it. And on behalf of the citizens of Lee County, thank you so much for taking that precious time out. My question is, under the redistricting and under the statutes of North Carolina, is it not true that every citizen that is currently represented in the legislature will continue to be represented in the legislature under this redistricting?
Thank you for that question, Commissioner, and the answer is yes.
Good.
My question, Representative, is very simple. Did either of you provide any notice to this board regarding the splitting of District 51, placing more specifically a large part of the minority district into Chatham County District 54? I don't remember seeing anything, is why I'm asking.
Thank you very much for the question, Commissioner. If I could, first of all, this has been the most open and transparent redistricting process that anyone can recall. We held 34 live public hearings across the state. The nearest one to where we're standing now, I think, was probably down at Campbell in Bowie's Creek. If I could, I think it might help, Madam Chair, with your permission, it might help to explain briefly the process that was used. First of all, we're under obligation, as you know. The most high order, if you will, is the one person, one vote rule. Everyone's votes are supposed to count the same. And that's easy to understand. If the 4 of you get to elect one member of a board and the 2 of these gentlemen get to elect one, then their vote's worth more than yours, because it takes 4 of you to do what 2 of them can do. So you try to make sure that each state House seat, each state Senate seat, and each U.S. House seat has roughly the same number of individuals in it. Just for the sake of not using a long number, we're gonna say that that's roughly 80,000 people that must live within each state house seat. 10 years ago, when the lines were drawn, that number was a little bit smaller. It was about 67,000 people, okay? Well, with that understood, the next thing that comes into play when you're dealing with Lee County in particular, and of course with Harnett, which I'm pleased and privileged to represent, we have to, by order of the Supreme Court, do what's called pair counties or pod counties. What that means is we have to create groups of counties, the smallest number possible, in order to get those state house seats. Last time around, if you grouped or potted the population of Lee County with the population of Harnett County, you got exactly enough for 2 seats. This time around, if you grouped Lee County with Harnett County, you had too many for 2 seats, but not enough for 3, which means a third county had to be brought into the mix. If I may, Madam Chair, and I don't know if you have someone that could possibly help, or perhaps my friend Representative Stone would help. I'd like to show you what we call the county groupings map. This is how all of our states, 100, may I leave this here, will it interfere with anything? I don't know if that'll go up there or not, but, if you will, picture, of course, Lee County. It borders, of course, Harnett, and it also borders the county of Chatham. If you look, these big dark blue lines, each of these represents a county group. Now, there's certain counties, let's use Wake County for instance, that have more than enough population to get more than 1 seat within that county. There are certain counties, we'll use Iredell for instance, it has exactly 80,000 people that live there. So 1 county, 1 seat, that's easy. The Supreme Court said that you had to group the counties in as smaller groups as you can. That means if you can get a seat out of 1 county, that's what you've got to do. If you've got to combine 2 in order to do one person, 1 vote, then that's what you've got to do. If it takes 3, then that's what you've got to do. But you can't use 4 if you can get by with 3. That's the law. So as we develop these, you will hear me use the slang term pods, because that's what they were called back in the early 2000s. But Representative Stone, if you would point out to the county grouping that contains Lee, Harnett, and Chatham, you will see that those 3 counties together, if you combine their population, you get enough for 3 House seats. So then, once you've met that test, okay, 3 is the magic number. There then becomes the challenge of how do you divide up those three so that it's fair, so that everyone gets a chance to understand and to be heard and to know where their lines fall. Well, we were also under the restriction of the Stevenson lawsuit from 2003 in what they called the number of county traverses, that was their word, county traverses that you have. That means how many times you cross a county line. I can tell you that we looked at every way we could figure out how to cross the lines the least. I can tell you that in an earlier map of our house plan, Lee County was whole. The problem with Lee County being whole is that would then mean that Chatham County would have to cross down into Harnett. Lee had already crossed down into Harnett, which means that Harnett would have 3 county traverses instead of just the 2 that it has now. Under the current plan that we have, the county of Harnett is split between 2 state house seats. The county of Lee is split between 2 state house seats. It's the same, it's equal. And of course, the county of Chatham is whole. You may ask how, and I think to try to hit more directly about what you asked, respectfully, Commissioner, we're also tasked with drawing the most compact districts that we can. That means if you can draw a seat that is here, that you shouldn't draw it here. It needs to be compact. So when we decided that we couldn't go into Harnett 3 times and not split Lee and not split Chatham, we said, how can we go into Lee and leave the majority of the county intact, if you will, but still get enough people, which is about 13,000 that we needed to get in order to get to that magic number. As you all know much better than I, most of Lee's population is concentrated in Sanford. So it made sense to us in trying to draw the maps that we would come into the city of Sanford, because that would let us get the most population that we could do while also maintaining the most compact district that we could. So that, in what was a very straightforward and short question, is my response.
With all due respect, and I really appreciate hearing what you just said, I don't know that it really addressed the question that I raised, which was, is there a particular reason that we didn't get any prior notification that we were going to be broken up? Did any county get it, that kind of notice?
With respect, sir, the only response that I can give is that each and every state house, and I'm sure that you, like the rest of the members of this board and the folks in this room, work and have a family to support, and you don't have time to sit and surf the web all the time. All I can say is that we did put each plan that was drawn, even each amendment that was offered to the plans, even the ones that didn't pass, were put and are right now online. There's some folks back here that have got those smartphones. I guarantee you that they can go to ncleg.net and see every plan, every single plan. And I will say that before we held each and every public hearing that was held, it was in the News and Observer. It was in the Greensboro newspaper. We did everything that we could. We mailed hundreds and hundreds of letters to various civic groups around the state and asked them to take part. Even at the legislative building itself, we provided a computer, a room in which to work, and a staff member to assist the general public in drawing their own maps, their own ideas. And we took to heart all of the comments that came in. I know that counties don't like to be split, if you will. When North Carolina was first established, we had one representative per county. That's just the way it worked. Back in as recently as the year 2000, what would have taken place, what I just showed you earlier, they said, okay, Lee fits with Chatham and with Harnett, we're going to give 3 seats, keep those 3 counties intact. But what the Supreme Court did in 2002 says no more multi-member seats. You've got to have single-member seats. And as such, the lines have to fall somewhere. So did we notify everyone? I do believe that we took as many reasonable steps as we could through the County Commissioner Association, also again through the websites, through newspapers, online, everything that we knew how to do to get the word out. Yes, sir, I do think we did that.
Well, then maybe my question should be directed to Representative Stone, because at that time, as we are now, still under 51, did you send any correspondence or meet with the chair or any members of the board?
Well, I think as you said earlier, there was plenty of maps going out, and as I recall, Commissioner Womack even came up and spoke at the redistricting committee.
Let me interrupt you, please. What I'm talking about is representation.
Right.
I understand that you had a process in place and a job to do. My question goes to the heart of representing Lee County and saying you're about to be split. And here's what it's going to look like. It's what I'm asking you about.
In those discussions,
what steps did you take?
Well, there wasn't a lot this board could do. It was all in my hands. So I did talk to Representative Lewis, and we had conversation about not being happy with splitting up District 51. But at the end of the day, I was a vote. So we had the communication in Raleigh about splitting up District 51.
Yes, sir, in Raleigh.
Yes, sir.
And what I'm saying is, even though it was made clear to me that we can't do anything about it, we certainly could have gone on record being in opposition to it, depending on the vote, of course.
I think
of this board.
Commissioner Womack did. He actually went to Raleigh and spoke.
He didn't speak for the board.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
No,
Your
I think his point
No,
was is that
no.
every citizen of Lee County, Commissioner, had the opportunity, had well announced, it was in the paper, it was well advertised.
See, we have a representative who could give us direct information regarding this split.
It was posted online and everyone could see it
I don't
exactly
know.
the way it was. Well, you know, I'm sure they could hand deliver to every person in the
No,
county
that's
what they're
that.
planning to do.
But that's not the issue. The issue is representation. That's all I ask. Did he come or offer anything to this board to say, you guys are about to be split?
I have a question, please. First of all, I couldn't agree more with the train of thought that Mr. Reeves is putting forth at this time. I'd like to know this. Are there many reconfigurations or redistricts that are taking place? I know that there probably are, and I wonder roughly how many, and I'm wondering a couple of questions on a comment, and then you feel free. So I wonder if you could describe that, and then do you anticipate any court challenges on this redistricting? Because I suppose I feel underrepresented for the same reason that Mr. Reeves has suggested, that we as county commissioners and as an extension of the state of North Carolina were unaware, well, we were aware that this kind of thing was going on, but no one spoke to us about our pleasure or displeasure, our approval or disapproval of this process. And I do know that there are many people who resent this and who feel that it is inappropriate and that it could have been done in a different way. I mean, you'll say, perhaps, that does not surprise you. But I wonder if you can recall any of the opposing arguments that were made, and I really am wondering if this and some others will be challenged in the court, because we as a board of commissioners did not say yay or nay to anything, and the online bit is just frivolous. I mean, we are dealing in flesh and blood, one-on-one. That's what we're sitting here for. And I think the Board of Commissioners deserved to hear about this at an appropriate time, somewhat in the past, so that we could have expressed ourselves.
Can I ask a question? Did you say earlier, did I understand that the way that Lee County is configured, that it was too large to have one representative? Is that right?
No,
It's actually too small.
actually too small.
Is there a map of the,
Do you have a map of the proposed redistricting?
His comment earlier, just to synopsize, was that we're in a three county cluster or pod, and that 3-county cluster or pod has they have rules that say you should have to do it with as few divisions as possible. And when they looked at what they had, in order to make Chatham into a separate seat, they had to go down into Harnett, which meant Harnett would have been carved into three pieces. And rather than carve Harnett into 3 pieces, they carved Harnett into 2, and they took a slice out of Lee to get Chatham whole. So that's how they did it, and it makes perfect sense. It's compliant with the courts, or at least as far as we know, the Department of Justice has already reviewed it and granted permission for it, and it makes a lot of sense what they did. It's less gerrymandered than it was 10 years ago when the Democrats controlled the process. So I don't understand the grief. I mean, we're going to get great representation in Raleigh. Personal opinion, of course. We're going to get great representation in Raleigh. The difference is that Ms. Kimball's going to have a few different ballots for Lee County. That's the real difference here. Is there's going to be a little more complexity in the ballot structure, but you know, no matter how you carve it up, somebody has got to be in a district that balances out counties per the edicts of the court.
did you not go on record?
I was given ample opportunity to go up multiple times, and I elected to go up on my own expense to Raleigh, and I pleaded with Senator Ruccio in Raleigh, you know, on the cameras statewide when we had that statewide hearing, and every county was out there arguing for the same thing. Don't carve me up. Don't carve me up. And I felt like a lone voice, but I spoke to not carve Lee County up. At that time, they were going to carve us in the 2nd Congressional District. They're going to take a sliver out the northeastern corner of the county. And I pleaded with them to leave because we're a small county. We should be left whole. But I certainly understood the explanation that was given later that they couldn't leave us whole and be fair to the other counties around us, that a small part of Lee County was going to be carved out. And I understand it. It makes sense to me, and I don't think that there's anything sinister in the process.
Madam Chair, I would like to just answer one part that I understood clearly from Commissioner Hayes. The process in which the maps came about, once they passed with a majority vote in the General Assembly, they were sent to we're required under the Federal Voting Rights Act, as I think Lee County may be. I know that Harnett is, we're required to submit the new plans, if you will, to the U.S. Department of Justice. The plans were reviewed, and within the 60-day window they have to review the plans, they found no objection with plans. The slang term that we use there is they pre-cleared the plans. The second part of what you asked, yes, sir. In fact, as an aside, I'll tell you that North Carolina combined with Texas has more redistricting law decided by the courts than all of the other 48 states put together. So yes, this, like all the other maps, has wound up in court. There's a 3-judge panel in Wake County that is reviewing this case now. They issued a partial ruling today in which they actually dismissed, I'd say, about half the case. And then they said that they did want to hear sometime in June or July the arguments for the part of the case that they did not dismiss. As far as trying to keep the county whole, I do agree with what Commissioner Womack said. We heard this from my job in this. I got the privilege to go to the northeastern part of our state about 6 times, and it was always the same: keep our county whole, keep our county whole. We did that in every instance that we could. Lee County is whole in the North Carolina Senate plan and also in the U.S. House plan. And I don't know how much, I'll go so far as to say that Representative Stone did push to keep Lee County whole in the House plan. And it was only when we were able to have a conversation and I was able to explain to him that by keeping Lee County whole, which would have actually made the map look neater, we would actually open ourselves up or weaken our case that we knew was going to court, because we would have traversed into Harnett County 3 times when we didn't have to do that.
I went back and looked district in the like past 30 years or so. And in that 30 years, we've had 3 Democrats and 3 Republican representatives. And we've had good representation in the past. I guess my question is, was it mandatory to do this, to do this?
Yes, sir. We're required by both the North Carolina Constitution and later U.S. Supreme Court cases that say every 10 years after the census numbers come out that you've got to redraw the lines. And again, in the example that I tried to use earlier, we had some House seats that were drastically underpopulated, and we had some that were drastically overpopulated. I can recall one of the seats in Wake County. Again, I said that the ideal number when these maps, when the old maps were implemented, was about 67,000 people per House seat. We had one seat in Wake County that had nearly 180 in it. So, in effect, the folks that were in that seat, their votes were diluted by a third, if you will, because there were so many folks still choosing the one me and Kimber to go to the House.
Well, for what it's worth, my contention is that I'm of the opinion that this board should have been given an opportunity to voice our concern about it formally through our representative, regardless of whether we can make any changes on this or not. I understand what has been done. I understand the reason it's been done. I still feel this is a matter of mutual respect, is what I consider to be.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to remind you, as your House 51 rep, I've served you for approximately about 1 year in Raleigh. And I can tell you that every member of this board has my email address in Raleigh and my phone number. And I can tell you that the ones that have called me has had ample responses to all their questions and concerns. We're there to serve the citizens of Lee County. So if you want something or you need something from our office, you call us. We will help everyone in an equal manner. But you call us, we'll help you.
Chair, I'd just like to go on the record again as saying that I was particularly impressed with the redistricting process that went on this year. I would like to have seen Lee County kept whole. I'll be on the record as saying that. I thought it would have been great if we could have been kept whole in all the races. Simplified our Board of Elections. It would have simplified our ballot management. But I also recognize that you got to do what you got to do with the court system, and with all the 100 counties in North Carolina having to be dealt with fairly and equitably. I think this process was as transparent, as open, and as accessible as anything I've ever seen in my life. I went back and looked 10 years ago, in 2000, when I was still a fairly new citizen in Lee County, and this process was 10 times more accessible and transparent than it was 10 years ago. 10 times more effective. I didn't know beans about what was going on. In fact, I couldn't even get in the census in 2000 where I was living in Harnett County at the time because of a lack of interest in Cary at that time. So I've just been very impressed with everything y'all are doing, with what you've done, with the communications back and forth. I just want you to know that I mean, not everybody's going to share that same opinion, but I want the citizens to know that some of us believe that it was very well done, very well executed, and my hat's off to you and Senator Rucho for all that redistricting.
And I'd like to say this, my reason for asking was it mandatory was because I know we could probably save some money by leaving it like it was. There'd probably been some money saved in what it's going to cost to print ballots and change things.
It might have saved Lee County money, but it wouldn't have saved Chatham County or Harnett County.
I'm interested in Lee, not Chatham and Harnett.
But they're citizens too, and those are state tax dollars that come from you and me.
We all are, but do you agree that there should have been a different way of approaching this?
You know, I exhausted every remedy. Personally, Commissioner Reeves, I exhausted every remedy I had to try to keep Lee County whole. I went up, I was
Half
invited.
of the board, was there a vote?
But you know, we had during this process, we had at least 8 or 10 different board meetings where anybody could have made a motion or could have brought this up or presented a resolution, and we had ample opportunity to do that, and we chose not to have a voice in it, to let the people, our elected representatives, do their jobs in Raleigh and do it effectively and in accordance with the court of law. And I think they've done that. And I'm very pleased with what they did. Now, we're going to disagree because some of us are on one side of the fence and others are on the other side. And the ones that didn't win the election or didn't control the Congress, they're going to be upset because they didn't get exactly what they wanted. The ones of us that were on the other side of the fence, we're a little happier with it because we think that things came out where it's going to be productive for everyone.
I will say that I think it's through our association that I was notified of the hearings. And I did attend one, I think it was at CCCC up on the second floor of that one building. And there were members of your party there, leaders of your...
This is not about a party, it's about Lee County.
I know, but I'm saying it wasn't just Republicans in that room. So they evidently heard about the hearing and could get up and speak to, considerations they wanted. So there were people who knew that these hearings were going on. So
well, you two did, I mean, you admitted that, but never came back and issued anything regarding the board's position or initiating anything regarding the board's position.
Well, I'll apologize that I didn't come back and tell you that everything that I've done in my private time to go up and speak, I was speaking as a private citizen. But I will say this, that there was more advertisement, more paper publishing of this material, more blogging about it. I mean, there were several blogs, three of them in this room that were blogging about it all through the process and describing everything that was going on. I remember within hours after it was posted on the internet, the NCACC and I knew about the new maps that were drawn. We couldn't see the detail, the sliver of Lee County that was taken away, but we knew part of it was there, and it was made public in the Sanford Herald. It was made public the next day, and there's been plenty of time since that time to go back and join them in a lawsuit or do whatever. So, I mean, this has been a very open, transparent, and well-publicized event.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
and just for the record, I chaired the meeting at the community college here when we had the program in Lee County where we actually videotaped statewide.
There were other sites that were linked into that one, so, and I wasn't about to state the position of the board because, you know, as much as you and I agree on things, Robert, there are probably gonna be some things that we don't agree on. So I wasn't gonna speak on behalf of the Board of Commissioners, I was speaking on behalf of me as an individual citizen.
But may I?
How about the citizens of Lee County? You could have come back and said, we need to take a position on this issue.
Exactly.
Here's what I picked up at these meetings, and here's what it looks like is gonna happen to Lee County. Where do we stand?
Yeah.
At that point, we didn't know. We were just speaking out that, you know, things that we.
But Madam Chair,
Right.
may I say this, that I think Mr. Womack had said that we could have chosen over a period of time. I think it would have been well if you had brought this to our attention and agendarized it as our chairperson to put this on the agenda and say this is in play and this is something that we should be talking about.
And Commissioner Hayes, I respect that, but let me offer this too. This is a highly politicized process. And I think we're trying to do the business of the people here without getting political as much as possible. And to be honest with you, this was highly, it was a supercharged environment. There were lots of criticisms back and forth. And I think the business of the local electorate here is to try to avoid politics wherever we can and to do the things that are fiscally and socially prudent for this county. And therefore, we chose not to enter into that fray because there was very little we could do about it in the first place other than some sort of pro forma resolution saying we want to be kept whole, which several people spoke about publicly anyway. So I'm not sure it would have made any difference other than just tie up more time in this board.
Well, I do think that part of this legislation now, in 10 years from now, there's legislation that controls this, so it won't be controlled by whichever party is in power. It will be done by, kind of like Iowa does it, right?
Madam Chair, the bill that you speak of did indeed pass the House. I know that Representative Stone and I both support that. It has yet to pass the Senate.
So that's something we need to get involved with, is to get it into a nonpartisan third party that does it, and that way, okay.
Thank you both for coming today. I really appreciate it.
And I agree, you know, districts are political. You take a look at what happened with the city council ward districts just recently. There was some, you know, manipulating going on there. So I appreciate this, and thank you very much for taking the time to be here.
Just to close, if you need us, we're just a phone call away. Glad to help you where we can and address your concerns. Thank you, Citizen Lee County, Harnett. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Next on the,
I just want to say that I think the
oh, second Charlie, did you want to say something to these two gentlemen?
No, thank them for coming, I appreciate that, but I'm only getting about half the stuff, so if you could get John to call me back on my number to see if we can get a better connection.
Okay,
Otherwise, people are going to talk a little bit.
okay. You're probably hearing me loud and clear because the mic's right in front of me, so we'll see if we can get that technical problem corrected.
Okay?
Thanks.
You gonna call me back?
John, give me the number.
John went out to see what he could do now, so go ahead and hang up.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I was just going to also close and echo Representative Stone's words. Thank you so much for the chance to be here today. I appreciate the service that you all give to the citizens of Lee County. It is often a very thankless job, and I appreciate the fact that you all care enough to become involved as a more frequent visitor to the Harnett County Board of Commissioners. Let me assure all of the members of the board that you have a much more attractive chair.
Lift it up.
That's right.
Okay, public, I guess we need to, we go ahead with public comment before waiting to see.
I would recommend you take, or just stand at ease a moment. All he's got to do is dial the number, and I'm sure he'd like to hear the public comment.
Okay.
Position of that?
Do we, anybody need to take a 5-minute break?
I think you can dial it right away.
While we're waiting, I just want to mention to you, and this was, I'm taking this from my commissioner comments, so I'm just going to do that. I met last Friday with the Boys and Girls Club, last Friday, last Thursday, and they were responding to things that were in our Lee County State of Health report. And Bo had given me several areas that they responded to with the mental health and teen pregnancy. And I'm going to give this to Gaynell and ask that you make copies and get it to everybody. And I think it would be good with maybe our health director and one or more members of the health board to meet with them to see the kinds of things they're doing. You know, one of the things that concerns me is, you know, so many nonprofits in Lee County are all kind of working on the same thing. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is, and money's going here, and money's going here. I was very impressed with the results they get and what they're doing here, especially with the mental health counseling for the youth that's
I'm
there.
glad to pass that on tonight. Yeah,
Okay.
I'm glad.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Park should be on the speaker if you'd inquire.
Are you there, Charlie?
I'm here.
Okay.
Does that connection seem a little better, Mr. Clark?
Does the connection seem to be a little bit better?
No.
It's not a perfect system.
It's not a perfect system, and
Okay.
so we'll,
I may ask you from time to time to repeat something.
okay. I'm just looking here what needed action on. Is it, there's nothing really here that we're voting on tonight, right?
On the districting public hearing? What we've been through so far?
Well, the public hearing, we're not going to vote on that tonight. There's no action required, right? Tonight?
There will be no votes.
Other than, excuse me, other than
Charlie,
Public
they'll,
hearing, there won't be a vote.
Unless someone moves to waive, or we didn't have the contract in time to do that, did we?
No, sir.
Okay, so then there shouldn't be a vote.
so Charlie, there's no votes on here, so you could actually watch the meeting in its entirety on video probably late tomorrow afternoon.
Well, there will be a vote to adjourn, vote to go to executive session, and so there will be some votes.
Okay, we will be adjourning and going into executive session later, so I guess just hang in there if you want to, but know if you miss anything, it is being recorded.
Okay, I'll hang on.
And if anything with the vote comes up, I'll yell at you.
I'll vote for you, Charlie.
Okay, public comments. We have two individuals. First one, Sheila Barber.
Hi, Commissioner Sheila Barber. I live at 232 Palace Drive in Sanford, North Carolina. I'm here to express my disappointment in a letter that I received last Thursday from the county attorney. The reason I got this letter is because I made a Freedom of Information ad for a copy of a CD that was given to a well-known individual, one that's sitting in this room right now, with information that had not been reviewed. I, as someone who has their email address that's on those emails, and on that CD, I want a copy of it. I want to see what was given to them, and I want it have the same respect that the individual was given. In other words, I want it free of charge as well. I believe it's not my mistake that the county government employees release this information without thoroughly understanding some privacy laws, without thoroughly checking it. I do really understand the disclaimer, that it's public information, but who knows? I may have told them where the tattoo my daughter has is. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what private information is on it, and I believe as an innocent bystander, I should get it. Again, my reasoning is I don't know what's in there. I received this letter from the county attorney that states certain things. First, they don't make backup copies. You don't make backup copies of information you're giving to citizens. Why not? Secondly, they didn't give a backup copy. They didn't make backup copies. Why did they give a backup copy to Commissioner Womack? That doesn't make sense to me as a citizen. Third, they have to retrieve the information from Commissioner Womack to review the contents of this information that is confidential, privileged, and personal. That is stated in this letter. Okay? I have this to say. Say what? I'm an IT person. If you don't have a backup copy, how did you give Commissioner Womack a copy? If you need Commissioner Womack's copy, how come, or have you asked, Mr. County Manager, have you asked for that copy back from the said individual that I'm referring to?
Direct your comments that way.
That's fine. Because if you haven't, you should. My information's on it. Again, I'm an innocent bystander here. I want this copy. I want a copy of the same information. I want the same respect that you're giving this other individual. So, also I was told in this letter that I'm going to be charged $1,150 for a copy of a copy. I don't know where the term reasonable charge comes from, but it does not cost $1,150 to get a copy of this CD. In this letter, it is stated to me that you have to do review of over 3,000 emails. I asked, why was it not done first? I'm not very happy about this. I'm going to get passionate here in a minute if I'm not already, because I am very upset about it. The fact is, county departments that are involved did not check what they gave to the individual. The individual has had this copy of this CD for over 4 months. Where that information has gone, if it's still with the if the information is still with the individual, I don't know. I'm an innocent bystander, and I'm asking that this letter that I was sent be reversed. I'm asking this board, whether you want to or not, vote on it, because one day you're going to be on my side of the fence.
You have 30 seconds, Ms. Barber.
That's fine, because my next comment is this: I do not care what it takes, because I feel like I have been compromised and violated. I will get this information somehow, some way. It does not matter to me how, but I believe that I should not have to pay for the mistakes of others, especially the mistakes of others in my county government.
Next person, Keith Clark.
Well, Madam Chairman, I appreciate this opportunity. I realize that apparently there's some among us who do not only not want to provide information, but they don't seem to want any information from the public. These are the discs. And I came here today to address concerns of people like Mrs. Barber, because it has been hyped that these documents are full of things that are illegal to produce. As I look at that list, they are not appear in North Carolina's law to be exempt from the public information law. I know what's on here from Mrs. Barber. There's nothing on there that would have prevented it from being released. She would not have been asked for a penny if this commission had not been misled about the illegality of separating commingled information and charging a person for it. So I think the board does indeed need to address the contents of these documents. If you don't, I will. Because what's happening is people are trying to cover up. They're trying to hide. They're trying to incite the public by suggesting that there's nothing about her daughter's tattoo on here, but there's plenty about her opinion of public officials and her opinion of how people are doing their job and who ought to be sued and who ought not to be sued. There's plenty of that, but there's not one thing related to personal affairs of this individual. And I want to assure the public out there that there may be one person on this list. Maybe one, and that's a judgment call. It is pure hype, and it's confused the public because one person has maintained it should have been confidential, it should never be released, and that individual handed it to the publisher of the local newspaper. Now, you can't have it both ways. You can slip and slide, but those days are gone. I suggest driving around in a car instead of a tank.
Okay, moving right along. Next on our agenda is the public hearing to consider an economic development incentive. Mr. Hughes? I guess if you'll just present it first, and then we'll go into the public hearing.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I am Bob Hughes. I am representing the Economic Development Corporation. I'm the executive director there. We are here to hold a public hearing to hear comments regarding a recommendation from the Economic Development Corporation Executive Committee for the county to invest in the Cloverleaf project in the amount of $206,000, $206,807. First, I'd like to talk a little bit about the company, and then I'd like to talk a little bit about the project, if that's okay. The company is a family-owned operation. They came to Sanford by purchase of the Imperial Freezer Service that's on Blue Trail Road. It was primarily, it has been primarily a freezer locker, serving the needs of the poultry producers in this area. Cloverleaf, now with this purchase, operates over 63 million cubic feet of refrigerated warehouse space in facilities that span the nation's prime protein producing area of the Midwest and the South Atlantic. The warehouse operations here in Sanford will continue to be overseen by the Imperial Freezer management team that's been in place there since 1996 when they opened up. The warehouse currently provides for 13,800 pallet positions and is located on a 33-acre site, allowing for future expansion of the facility. Cloverleaf has been around since 1934, first as Farmers Produce, and then later as Cloverleaf, and now, in addition to Cloverleaf, also operate under the name of Farmers Produce. The Cloverleaf operation is primarily the freezer locker operation, where they take the processed foods and store them until the customer is ready for them. Farmers Produce is actually a different operation, and that's a processing plant and a processing facility. That is not a kill facility. Basically, they take meat that's been processed already somewhere else, and then package it, cut it up for the customer, and then keep it in place until the customer needs it. They've got 15 locations throughout the United States. I mentioned that, all the way from Sioux City, Iowa to Sumter, South Carolina. We have, as far as Farmers Produce is concerned, we're talking about the possibility of boxing, deboning, trimming, export packaging, scaling and pre-pricing, vacuum packaging, water and air defrost operations, and then market protection programs, all done in a USDA facility. When we look at Cloverleaf and the potential there, they're looking at a facility, adding to that facility to the tune of about 40,000 square feet for the operations or the processing facility. And then also, probably in phase 2, maybe in phase 1, adding another 70,000 square feet of freezer space. That would take the total development up to about 242,000 square feet. We're talking about, over a 2-year period, hiring an additional 58 people. Those folks would be hired at an annual average wage of $22,519, which I will tell you, and all of you know, is quite a bit below the average annual wage provided by employers, manufacturing employers here in this community. They will also, though, at the same time providing a wage, will provide 80% of their health insurance, and they provide an addition, or they provide adding to the pension plan for individual employees. So it's a job that provides what we believe are the benefits that people are looking for. In looking at that particular project, we're looking at a potential of about $12 million investment. That's broken out in $9 million in facilities, and that also another a little bit better than $2 million in machinery that would go inside those facilities. As always, we take these numbers and for the investment and for the jobs, and we call on East Carolina University and ask them to take a look and use their in-plan program to see what kind of economic impact that has in the community. So in 2012, with the 30 additional employees, that will create a total of 40 jobs within Lee County and the surrounding counties. And this additional employment will generate an additional $1.14 million in labor income for those employees. That's just in 2012. In 2013, the addition of another 28 jobs, bringing the total to 58, will have a total employment impact, so additional jobs of 77 jobs in the Lee County area. And those 77 jobs will generate $2.15 million in labor income. In looking at the new construction that will take place, we're looking at construction jobs of about 119 for Lee County and an additional 7 jobs in the surrounding counties for a total of 126 jobs, short term, and we all know that. But that project will generate $4.7 million in additional labor income for those construction folks. The Executive Committee of the Economic Development Corporation met, discussed this project, discussed the additional facilities they would be adding to this plant that's currently only a freezer locker. We talked about the fact that with farmers' produce and processing, that adds a different dimension and probably more longevity to this facility here in Lee County. So in the past, where it was just a storage facility, now it'll be processing pork in addition to chicken, and then maybe turkey as well. With the investment, that will add new revenue to the county, new jobs, 80% health and dental, and then 5% of that going to the pension and paid vacations. The Economic Development Corporation recommends the grant of $206,807. In talking to some of the work that, to Dan Kaplan with Cloverleaf and some of the work that needs to be done there, we're talking about the possibility of relocating the rail siding, the water and sewer lines that go through the property today, and then also the road. So quite a bit of site work needs to be done on that property. We will be talking with the city tomorrow night, holding a public hearing there as well to make them part of this deal. And we'll see what the city does with that. We are also, you should know, applying for some additional grant monies through the North Carolina Rural Center that would help with the infrastructure replacement or displacement that's anticipated to take place on that piece of property. The North Carolina Rural Center Board will meet at the end of the month to review this particular application, and the city is doing that. We have provided today to you an agreement, and I recognize that that will not be discussed today, but I do want to let you know that when we're looking at coming up with the $206,807, what we are looking at is anticipated revenues of twice that amount to the county for the new project that will take place at what used to be Imperial Freezer and now is Cloverleaf. So with that, I will stop unless you have any additional questions for me at this time.
Okay, so before we go into the public hearing, I'll entertain questions. Commissioner Hayes?
Did you say, or did I miss, that they are also looking at some alternative site, and how much credence do you put into that?
They have a location in Chesapeake, Virginia. Mr. Kaplan tells me that piece of land that they own up there is flat. There's really nothing they need to do other than throw a slab on the ground and get started with the building. So that's our competition in this case.
Is this their preferred for obvious reasons, that they would rather be in Lee than Chesapeake?
Well, I'd like to think that, and I think certainly they're talking to Smithfield, which is located in Tar Heel, North Carolina, but they're really looking to beef their presence up on the East Coast or South Atlantic.
Mm-hmm.
So it really can be in both locations, in either location.
Either
But you, in either location.
or both?
Well, I think it's in either at this point.
Okay.
And if you ask me what their preferred location is, I think this would be their preferred location.
Mr. Utes, is it possible that if this grant was not provided by Lee County taxpayers, that they may locate here anyway?
I think that's always possible. We do have in the grant agreement, a but-for clause that addresses that particular thing. But for this grant, you would locate either in Chesapeake, Virginia, or elsewhere.
But is that but-for really meaningful when they've got other grant applications in that might still be approved that would be even larger than this? I mean, how could that but-for have any meaning if they don't know what other grants they're going to get?
And the other grant application that we have is actually less than the amount that we're talking about.
So the NC Rural Center grant that you referred to earlier is less than the amount that Lee County would be providing?
That's correct.
And that was for infrastructure improvements?
That's correct.
Okay, and do you know what the amount of that grant is?
290, I think it was in round
Okay,
numbers.
and my recollection is you're asking the county for 200 and,
6,
so that's 206 is less than 290, is it not?
yes. And
Okay.
when I say it's more, that's
You meant
the total
coupled with
package.
coupled with the city?
The city,
Okay, I was
that's
referring to Lee
correct.
County,
Yeah.
okay. Is there a compelling requirement for us to have to move this forward now, or can we wait until after we see what other grants might come in from the state?
It's my understanding, and I've conveyed this to this board as well as the city board, that the company has customers that need questions answered, and they're interested in getting this resolved by the 15th of February.
Okay,
I've conveyed that to this board.
let me try to ask it a different way. Is there a compelling requirement, business requirement that you're aware of that says that they have to have an answer on whether or not Lee County will approve this incentive in the next 7 days, 10 days, 14 days? Do you have anything definitive from them?
Only what he's asked me to do, and that's to convey to you that they'd like to be able to say something to their customers.
Okay.
So that they can get moving in one place or the other on this particular project.
In January, there was an email that was sent that had requested opportunity to go ahead and jump ahead on getting site prep done down here by the railhead or by their railroad spur. And I was just curious, it sounded to me like the decision's already been made, they're gonna come here. Could you address that?
I provided that email to you, and I saw that in there. And after I saw that email, I addressed that particular issue with Mr. Kaplan.
Mhm.
And he said, this is all part of the due diligence that we go through in determining whether or not we're going to locate here or in another place.
Let me ask you to clarify that for me, and I read that in the email. How does clearing pine trees in preparation to lay a slab, how is that due diligence? That sounds to me like that's getting a jump on getting it done.
Well, clearing pine trees doesn't mean they're going to spend $12 million. I don't.
But would they have any other reason to clear pine trees and get ready for site prep if they weren't already decided to come here? I mean, what other possible thing, I can't think of anything that would cause someone to spend money on a site if they hadn't already decided they're going to improve that site for purposes of economic expansion. I mean, it just seems to me that way. Let me go to this other point about, or question about the jobs. I know that the county manager has been working on a straw man that would help us establish some thresholds. And I'm not sure where we are on that, John, but to establish some thresholds for income, so that when we have a jobs package, that it addresses what minimum level of income we're expecting to grant an incentive and minimum thresholds for investment. Now, I'm sure this is going to meet well above that threshold for investment. But how about on the jobs front? Are we really creating just more, I mean, I know they're not minimum wage jobs, but in the low 20s, that's well below the median wage for Lee County, is it not?
As I said earlier, it is below the average manufacturing wage, to the tune of about $10,000. There's no question about it, and I think the EDC recognizes that.
Okay.
I think, again, going back to the decision and deliberation, that in order to get to a place where they could recommend something, really had to do with the fact that we still have over 3,000 people that are on the rolls and on the books that are counted as being unemployed, of which there are a number of them that probably are at a skill level that could work in a place like this. That doesn't count the people that are no longer on the books, and we've talked about that many times. And I don't know how many that is, no one really knows. But we do know that there are a number of people that are out there that probably fit right here in this place, get their health care and dental care taken care of, as well as maybe put a little bit away for the future and get some vacation on top of that. So the total package, yes, we understand that, and I think we've talked about that going back in time, this board and the city and the town of Broadway adopted policies that have standards for wages contained within the policy that said, you know, it needed to meet at or above 100%. We had one that was $12 or better early on. So we've had all of that, but we're at a place now where the commissioners and city and the town of Broadway have adopted a policy that allows the EDC to look at the entire package. And I think the Economic Development Corporation has done that, and still sees this as a benefit to the community, a lot more benefit than actually we're looking at potentially paying out in this case.
Yeah. And Madam Chair, just one other comment, remark I'd make, and then I yield to whoever else has something to say. It still troubles me that I'm a sitting member of this EDC, and this is about the third or fourth incentive package that's come before this board that was not voted by the full body with a quorum present of the EDC. And I think that's just bad procedure for us to be using an executive committee to be making these decisions to move these things forward to the boards. I think we need to find a way to seat a quorum in the EDC, do some more coordination or whatever, get a quorum seated and then have it passed by the EDC. Because otherwise, I question, why do we have an Economic Development Corporation if a handful, 3 or 4 people are making all the decisions? I think it's bad practice, and I would like to see us in the future perhaps consider a motion to that unless the full body of the EDC votes, that we won't entertain these packages in the future. And I'll shut up for now.
Any of my colleagues have any further questions of Mr. Hughes?
I have one.
Madam Chair?
Oh, sorry, I forgot you were there, Charlie.
Yeah, I have a question. I sent Bob a message the other day asking him a question and didn't get a response to it. That was, this is in the city, and it seems like every time we get a package coming down, the county ends up paying the larger amount of money. Where it seems to me like the city should either be paying the larger amount since this benefits them directly and does not benefit our county people except indirectly, and the bigger cost keeps coming out of the county. We keep doing that, we can't do the things that we need to do, and I know we're going to discuss this at budget time, but we got a college out here that would like to have some things done. We've got things in our county itself that needs to be done, and we keep spending our entire funds. It doesn't seem to me like we're ever going to get there to help our county out. It's getting almost ridiculous. And I know that the city has the money because Sam Gaskins at our joint meeting told me that they were able to reduce their taxes and they had plenty of money. So I want to know why it is we keep getting the bulk of the funding requests.
I provided the board with a package of information as to how we came up with those numbers. And in that, we're looking at recommending from the Economic Development Board let's say a 5-year 50% grant. Okay, that's what we have going here. When we calculate the taxes paid in the city versus the taxes paid in the county has a higher tax rate. Okay? The city has a lower tax rate. So that's how we come up with that particular breakdown. The city,
that's how the city can keep having lower taxes is because we keep paying more of them. They paying 2/3 of this where we need only be paying 1/3 of it.
you know, I think that is, again, I'm showing you how we came to this particular calculation, and it's based on the different tax rates in the city and the county. However that's done in the future, however the directive comes down from the county commissioners and the city council, we can structure grants any way we need to. In this particular case, the recommendation is 206 from the county and 148 from the city, 149 from the city.
My recommendation is that you change that around.
Good for you, Charlie.
But that represents a differential, I believe you said, Mr. Hughes, between the rate of tax, the county versus the city. And there's nothing out of pocket. This is 50% reimbursement of taxes that they will pay, correct?
We will look every year at what's actually paid to the county and to the city. And then our grant will only go up to the amount that's approved through a contract. And in the city, in the county's case, I believe that was $41,000 a year in round numbers for the next 5 years.
These are new dollars, so to speak.
New dollars.
Yeah.
So if we pay out, let's say $41,000, then we have received 82.
Right.
Commissioner Reed, did you have a question earlier?
Yes, I want to follow up on Mr. Womack's comment regarding the quorum. Do you know why we're having that problem? I understand the fact that not enough people show up, but tell me why we're having the problem, because that's one of the things we have to be corrected as we move forward.
Well, I agree, and I think we've got so many people going in different directions, Mr. Reed.
Maybe they are not being on the board there.
Yeah, and we need, we've said, and we've actually, I don't know if Mr. Owens here. He didn't make it today, but he's my chair. He was going to try to be here if he could. We will sit down and propose potentially new dates and times to see when everyone can make it to the meeting. We tried during our regular scheduled meeting time to talk about this particular project. It didn't happen because we did not have a quorum. Therefore, we had to go into an executive committee format to do this.
I've read in some document that you all had approved telecommunications in your bylaws, something to when you didn't have a quorum present.
But wasn't that when there wasn't a quorum present?
Yeah.
Didn't they pass that when there wasn't a quorum? I think they passed that when there wasn't a quorum present.
Right. Well, and I think, we certainly can do, we don't have to, I know when that was done, and I remember that, and you're right, we did not have a quorum at that time. But I think it was in recognition of everybody's time. Certainly the open meetings law allow things like we're doing today with Charlie. So it didn't require any special motion on any part of the board. There's nothing in our bylaws that would prevent us. We are under the same laws that you are as a subcommittee of this body.
Well, I'm going to go out on a limb here and ask our county attorney, are we jeopardizing anything, or are we in effect when there's no quorum assuming all the liability or responsibility?
The bylaws of the EDC specifically allow for action to be taken by the executive committee. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing illegal with that.
Right.
Now, are you asking a follow-up question about the electronic meeting without a quorum being present?
No, but I'll listen to the answer.
That's not required to be put into bylaws of the EDC. They are considered a public body since they are appointed by public bodies, and they therefore can use the provisions of the open meetings law to conduct meetings when members are absent by electronic means.
Mr. Hughes, I'd like to make the suggestion that you urge the Economic Development Corporation to be aware of this conversation today, and that it make every attempt to have a full board present, because it's a sensitive thing, and it seems to me like that they would reach down and make an extra special effort. And especially, I would appreciate it in the future if your chairman could be here when we consider these things. I think a better understanding may be necessary.
I understand. Thank you.
I was just gonna say, I heard him say we had over 3,000 people unemployed in Lee County. And I'm sure out of that 3,000, there's probably 50 or so people that would love to have a job with 80% of the health and dental paid, and paid vacation and something paid into a pension for them. I think there's probably 40, 50 people in Lee County would love to have a job out here if we get these people to make this expansion.
Did you mention in your presentation that Cloverleaf was going to keep Imperial's management team and their current employees? So that's how many? 22. So the people that are currently there would continue to be employed. At what point will the additional 30 come from? Perhaps a year away, or?
I think we're looking for the additions within the first couple of years based on the documentation that they have provided us. First would be the processing folks, and then additional freezer folks, freezer locker folks for the backside.
Do you know these Imperial's people are currently employees, or are they contracted out?
Employees.
And so Cloverleaf would have Cloverleaf employees, they wouldn't look to a staffing agency, is that correct?
I'm sure to look to a staffing agency because just about every company does that now. So initially, and we've had it explained to us by Cloverleaf that in addition to the folks we've talked about here, being added 58 total in the next couple of years, there will be days where there might be 100 people working at that facility. Well, they need a staffing agency to do that. Now, where do companies typically get their help from that they put on permanently? Those people that have tested and tried that process. So it really works both ways. So they're going to be working with a staffing agency. I'm quite sure of that. But at the time, the county's employees that we will count would be Cloverleaf employees, would not be staffing agency employees.
And I can understand if they're outsourcing their HR functions to a staffing agency, but I recently saw a report in North Carolina where like close to 50% of the people now are contracted out. And I also read a little part of that said staffing agencies cannot legally provide the level of benefits and pension plans and whatever. So that's my concern, is that if they're getting this huge tax break that others in the county are not, and they're letting somebody else pay for the benefits, they're paying for that, but not nearly as much as they would if they were their own. I'm not quite sure that reflects in the already low wages that are there. So that's my concern.
I think that you'll see, and it's a valid concern, because it's certainly working through a staff agency, there's no obligation for the company to keep them from day to day, or week to week, or month to month, keep those employees. This is a family-owned business. Everything that we've seen so far has been nothing but professional. Okay, let's start there. Secondly, when they train people, any of the programs available through the community college to help train people coming on to their facility they're not going to get any help from the community college or public dollars to help with that if those people aren't hired by the company. They actually have to be employees of that particular company, not a staffing agency. So, that's another kind of threshold. When we look at our grant agreement, you'll see that we ask for that NCUI 101 form. That is the company's NCUI 101 form. They're not going to show staffing people on that. Okay? So it's a good concern, and I appreciate you bringing it up, but I think in this case, certainly we're going to be monitoring those permanent employees that they've hired for this operation and be able to report back to you.
Is it possible to get the Rural Economic Development Grant and, whatever the county and the city have to match for that? Actually, has the county got a match to that one?
That's not a matching program.
I thought all of them were matching programs if there were jobs involved.
No, the one program that is a one-to-one match is for jobs and for investment is the 1NC program. For the North Carolina Rural Center, for the $290,000 grant, and I think it's in round numbers, so don't hold me to that. They would have to show in round numbers $600,000 worth of work on that property, okay, that they're actually doing on that property, and bills that they paid for the site work that they're doing under those eligible items.
I think the
But
chairperson's
that's
question,
that's
though-
the private side, so it's not any county money that has to be matched.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say, I think the chairwoman's question was sourced based on a recent package that came in from the Rural Center where we had to provide a certain amount of, I think it was 10% or whatever the grant, and that was being covered by the company.
Yeah.
They were, or 5%, they were covered by the company.
Right, and the company is providing the 5% for the application that the city of
Okay.
Sanford is doing.
Okay, so
The
you're
city of
saying,
Sanford, but the county doesn't have
Okay.
anything to do with it.
See, and I'm in favor of the rural economic development grants when they're for infrastructure. In this one, there's roads, there's water and sewer. Actually, the city of Sanford, they're going to have their, who gets the proceeds from the rural economic development grant?
It would work much like the WST program that you're familiar with. Proceeds come to the city pays the company as the company shows that they have made these expenditures.
Okay. Any
so,
further questions?
yeah, just what's the timeline now? What are we anticipating? When will we review the contract and put it to a vote?
I think the timeline is totally in your hands.
Well, no, not in my hands, I promise you that.
When do you need it, is what I guess we're asking.
And when I say you, it is in the board's
Collectively.
All right.
hands.
When do you need it, Bob? That's,
I have been asked to see if this could be laid to rest by the middle of the month, February 15th.
When's our next board meeting? Because we have a policy that states that the vote will take place the meeting following the public hearing. Is it
2 weeks from today is the next regular schedule.
That'd be the 20th?
20th.
but we can adjourn to meet, we don't have to, we can adjourn and then meet, call a meeting.
You think 5 days difference is gonna make a difference in this company?
There's sometimes it does. If you've ever been in private enterprise, and I have, 5 days makes a lot of difference.
Well, why don't we ask the company rather than speculate? Why don't we just ask the company if we can wait till the
I've already
20th?
talked to Bob about that.
Because I think that other commissioners, I mean, I understand that the desire to want to jump forward on this thing, but I think let's be deliberate and let's go with our normal schedule until the company gives us a reason, compels us to have to move quicker. We can call a special meeting if we need to.
Okay, we haven't had our public hearing yet, so I declare the public hearing on this matter now in open session. All those speaking in favor of?
May I be on record to speak in favor of this particular project? As I said earlier, we still have a number of people that are walking the streets, collecting benefits or not collecting benefits that might have an opportunity to work at this particular facility. When the Townsend facility in Siler City and in Pittsburgh closed, it had an immediate impact on the Imperial Freezer facility. Today, they stand at about 50% of capacity in that particular plant. So the freezer plant as it stands today is subject to the whims and woes of the different processing plants that are in this area. There is, so in this case, now Cloverleaf comes in, Farmer Produce comes in. They have then the potential of adding added value with the processing that they now have the ability to do. That opens up opportunities for other types of protein to come into the facility and be reprocessed and stored there. So for the jobs, for the longevity of that facility, I make a recommendation that, and speak in favor of this. Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak against this incentive?
Madam Chairman, I wish to speak in favor, but you didn't
Okay.
call anybody else up. I think the public needs to understand that the process here, and I want to encourage the council commission to change its process. What we've seen here today, the way this needs to be considered, this particular project needs to be considered, another project is without the theater. We have members of this commission who expressly stated their desire is to eliminate the commission, and it'll be eliminated by the 1st of December of this year if they can gain simply one more vote for their position.
Point of order. Madam Chair, we need to
Yes.
stick to the subject.
I'm sticking to the subject, Madam Chairman. I am speaking
Are you in
about...
favor or against?
I am in favor, and in order to take in favor, I've got to adjust the concerns of the people who are opposed to it.
Well, the concerns are.
Would you like only
your
me to say
opinion.
what you want me to hear?
Just say why you are in favor of it.
I am in favor of this because it is one of the last opportunities that we will soon have. And the reason I believe that it's one of the last opportunities is that there are those who have professed...
This is not, do not get political.
I'm not being political.
You
Any more
are,
political
you're
than
projecting
anyone on
what-
your board is.
Mr. Talbert, what are my options here?
The gentleman has violated the rules with respect to public comment by moving into areas of politics. Commissioner Womack's point of order is well taken. The citizen also is very close to the line of being argumentative and disruptive. Your authority under this matter is to request him to conform his behavior and comments to the rules of the board, and should he not do so, you have the authority to have him removed from the boardroom.
Madam Chairman, I have here $1. I'd like to make a proposition to you and anyone watching. I will give you this $1 if you will give... I'll only do this for one person, by the way. I'm not Mitt Romney. So I will give this $1 to anyone who will give me 50 cents back. And that is what we do with this program called incentives. It has been misnamed and misrepresented. It doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. The tax administrator can provide documentation that shows that the tax rate in this county would be such that you would have to raise about $20 million more if you didn't have the benefit of property taxes on the people that receive incentives. And so if all of those closed on December 1st, you would be dealing with a significant property tax increase. It's unfortunate that this project has become billed as a jobs program because that's not really what this policy by the county was ever really meant to be. It's about building the tax base. It's about giving people jobs so they can build the tax base. And I don't want my taxes increased. But with home values down 25% over the last 5 years, I'm concerned that we have this additional revenue that we accept their $1 and give them back 50 cents. And I would say that you need to get used to outsourcing, and I'll be glad to contract with the EDC if they're willing for $1 a year to be glad to represent Mr. Hoots at these meetings. Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of or against? Yes, ma'am.
I'm Carol Carlson, and I had not planned on speaking, but I just wanted you all to know that, you know, we're talking about real people here, and I know a young gentleman who's been out of work. He is not real high skill, but he's married, he's not working, his wife isn't working, they have no transportation. But I had the opportunity to take him for an interview at Imperial. I mean, it's strange because, like I say, I hadn't planned on speaking. Anyway, this young man has gotten a job, and so he is one of those 3,000 that we talk about who is unemployed. So I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else wishing to speak in favor or against? And declare that public hearing closed. Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
You're welcome.
Chair, if I might, just as a matter of personal privilege, I would like to say that, and I appreciate the remarks that were made during the public comment. I would just like to offer that in the logical consideration of these incentive packages, I would ask that the population that watches this, monitors this, that they understand that certainly these hard-hearted commissioners that vote against incentives or that speak out against them are not against jobs in Lee County. That we are very much pro-business and pro-jobs. The problem we have is being convinced that giving away your tax dollars to a company that may already be expanding here, may already be planning to employ people here, is what they call showing a little love, putting a little icing on the cake. And that's the concern that we have, that there are occasions where these incentive packages are just putting our arm around somebody and saying, let's give you a little more money to come here and create jobs. That we're not convinced in some cases that it's really necessary to give away your tax dollars back to that company, especially when we can't do it for every company. Particularly companies been operating here for 20 or 30 years in Lee County that can't get anything like that. So that's the concern.
I'd like to comment on that. The key word Commissioner Womack used is may.
Right.
May.
I'd like the permission of the board. We've had folks here from Fleming Transportation sitting way before the meeting started, and since there's 4 of them, would this board have any problem in rearranging our new business? But I know that Commissioner Oldham has a 6 o'clock Board of Health meeting.
7.
Oh, 7?
Yeah, I'll make a night of it.
So,
Well, we voted for a longer meeting,
so what is?
trying to help.
Does anybody have any objections? Would you like to go now? Since
Oh,
you
of
did
course.
it?
Yeah, thank you.
So, just so the public knows, this, and my colleagues, we're on page 46 of your agenda, and what we're going to see here is a PowerPoint presentation, I believe, from Fleming Transportation on a service that I believe the county can benefit from.
Absolutely, yes. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to present a brief summary of Fleming Transportation's plan to improve service and reduce cost for the citizens of Lee County. We have submitted to you a more detailed report that you've had to take a look at, and we've made a summary of this presentation, which I believe you have copies of there too. My name is Walter J. Antonell. I'm president of the Antonell Consulting Group, and my associate, Sabella Robinson. She'll be saying a few words here also. And she's the executive business manager with Fleming Transportation. And just one other preliminary statement that we've been working for a full year along with Fleming and putting together this program to privatize the transportation requirements of Lee County. And we've been through many stages and many steps, starting with the development of a strategic business plan and the successful presentation to the Department of Transportation in Raleigh to privatize the transportation of Lee County. We have also made a presentation to to several of the commissioners and to the Colts organization. What I'd like to do is to just get right on into it. Here it comes. We have a PowerPoint presentation that will show that what we can do, what Fleming Transportation Inc. can do for the citizens of Lee County. The number one statement up there is to offer 24/7 transportation. We have looked at the reports that indicate that the number one concern of the citizens of Lee County in terms of transportation is that there's no service after 5 o'clock and there's no service over the weekend. We are already 24/7 and we would make the combined operation 24/7 immediately. We have the technology and the knowledge to have that occur. We are going to save taxpayers money. And this is not a, let's take a look at the budget at the end of the year and show you what we've done. We've said that we're going to take a 20% reduction in the existing budget to start off, and then take a look at what we can do in addition to that by the end of the year. So that is a direct statement. We are also going to provide jobs for the community, because under a combined operation with some of the additional work that we will be doing, we will have a lot of opportunity to provide jobs to the community. What I also have here is a little bit of a national statistic that indicates that putting taxi service into paratransit in our nation is a good thing, and surveys have been made to determine the effect of that, and we find that that this is a very good feature when we have taxi paratransit programs, and some of the results of those surveys are here in this PowerPoint. Without going into that detail, obviously I can tell you that, for instance, we had some, there were 29 cities surveyed on the use of taxis operating in paratransit programs. And these are the recaps of those programs. And let me tell you, just as an example, I don't have a laser beam here, but right up on top on Denver, you can see that they have made 985,500 trips. And that they're about 5% of the ADA requirement for that city. And the important element is that their cost is $5.50, and the paratransit cost from the local government agency was $47.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
Those are some pretty impressive cities. Do you have anything that's more like the size of Lee County?
Not on this particular survey, but it did include, I have national statistics in the strategic business plan that included very small locations.
Because I know, I recognize the law of large numbers.
Yes.
That you can get a lot of efficiency out of large,
Yes.
Hundreds of thousands of paratransit trips a year. I'm just curious of what you get when you get just a very small fraction of that. Can you get the same efficiency?
You can. You really can, because it obviously with an order of magnitude, with a larger population, you get a larger number. But the same principles of consolidation of passengers and the proper dispatching of those passengers would create the savings. So it's just really an example to show that we do have support from a national basis on this type of an approach.
Sir, you have 5 minutes left, and that excludes the time you took.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It does exclude that time?
Yes, sir.
Good, okay. What we wanted to tell you a little bit about in the statistics is that taxis provide more flexibility. They are able to get to where you want to go very rapidly. There's a little bit of exclusivity where a person in a taxi feels that they are more, it's there for them, as opposed to many people There's a definite cost reduction in everything that we're doing here. There's a wide area of coverage. We have very rapid response capability because we have the right vehicle for the right approach. And we can get to hard-to-reach locations, and we can provide stable employment. Here we take a look at the future expectations of the Taxi Paratransit Association. 12 of the 29 cities predicted increases. 14 of the 29 cities predicted stable services, and only 3 cities predicted a slight decline. And these are the figures that back that up in those areas. Now, this is what I wanted you to take a look at, the national comparisons between taxi and other services.
Let me stop you there. On your previous slide, you said you showed predicted increases. Do you have any post facto evidence that it actually met predictions or met expectations?
They are going to be doing follow-ups on this particular survey. You know, it's already been established at the beginning, so we'll be able to compare the predictions to the actuals.
Okay.
But they're not quite yet available. I think we're going to have them at the end of this year. Here on these national comparisons, if we take a look at a taxi, paratransit, and other services, you can see that taxis are a little bit more convenient to use. They get there more quickly. There are not a lot of steps involved in loading and unloading. And I can tell you that you do have queues here, particularly in dialysis, when the vans are loading and unloading wheelchairs. That queue gets quite extensive. I did a quick work sampling there, and it's really, it shouldn't be there, and we could eliminate that particular queue. Just wanted you to see some of these other comparisons in the vehicles, because we would be providing the right vehicle for the right job. Key points, you know, we will be developing, I'm going to come back to your area, and implement extensive driver training. We want to make sure that all the drivers are trained with every requirement from the Department of Transportation, as well as the ADA. And we will structure driver income and levels sufficient to effectuate quality. We have always employed the motivation of earning money based on the efficiency of the day's job, as opposed to just having a salary. There's no incentive with a salary to be productive in cases where you have lines and queues. So we have put this element together, and we know that we're going to be able to get a lot more from that. We're going to create high standards for service. We'll have standards for unloading and loading of passengers, so that we meet those standards on a daily basis. We will be very strong on complaints and follow-up on complaints, remove drivers that do not meet quality standards, and we want to build positive relationships.
You have 90 seconds, sir.
Wow. Driver benefits will have expanded opportunities. Rider benefits, we will have exclusive rides, shorter wait times, and look for last-minute trips and for personal approach. Here's the dollars. We will start off with an operational budget that is reduced by 20%. The money comes out up front before we get started. We also are going to take the same approach on the capital budget with the vehicles, which have, in some cases, less than a 20% usage factor on those vehicles that just sit in the lots. The money is real, the savings are real, and our improvements to the community will be felt immediately. We're going to go through basic cost service studies that are part of logistics and distribution. We have people on this program that have 100 years of experience in transportation. I have been involved in programs in my entire professional career of this nature, involving logistics, transportation, and so forth. So it will be involving restructuring in the operational capacity of the program, so that we can provide that service to the citizens of Lee County.
Sir, your time is up, subject to the discretion of the board by majority vote to allow you more time.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I move that we let him finish.
Sabella, are you, have a part to take in this also?
Yeah, she does.
I did, but I have to go back a slide or two. Sorry.
You said
If
to
the
her.
board will.
Yeah, I say let him go.
How much longer?
It won't be that too long.
Just, no, no.
Another one more.
Madam Chair. I just really wanted to pinpoint on the key listings that we had up there because there are two major points that we are currently in the process of doing now. And one of it is the building of the positive relationships. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Okay, we already have contracts with dialysis, Medicaid, CCH, Kerr Drugs, et cetera, et cetera. However, we were limited at operating at 100% capacity because we did not have these wheelchair accessible vehicles. So what we're doing now is we have applied for the JARC and the New Freedom Grant, which is a small, piece of the pie for a larger opportunity.
What's the name of that grant
there.
again?
New Freedom and the JARC program.
How you spell that?
JARC.
Okay.
Okay, now, the reason why is because we found that it was listed in the Human Service Transportation Coordinating Plan, that this was listed as a huge need. And this was for Moore, Chatham, and Lee. Not only was it the nighttime and the evening services that were lacking, but they didn't have the capacity to coordinate county-to-county vehicle transfers. And this is where this is our expertise. So what we wanted to do was also get with the other county transportation plans and set up workshops to show them how to coordinate with us, okay, so that we can fill this need and this gap here. Another thing is what he was starting to hit on was that we do realize that we're going to need some more training. This is also a part of the process, and we do have certain monitor and base cost service studies too. Help us monitor that. What we're going to do is look at medians across the board for other outsourcing ventures that are still operating this program. We're going to look at that medium and we're going to try to exceed it. And we're going to do our best to exceed it. And also with our basic cost study,
Right.
we're also going to weigh it on monetary value. So I just wanted to make that very clear that we're in the process of doing these things now, and we hope to have your blessing. Thanks.
I have a few questions, if I may.
Sure.
You mentioned grants, and obviously that perked my ear up. I'm curious about grants. Would you be eligible for all the same grants that our current Colt service is receiving?
No, we are only eligible for the JARC and the New Freedom.
Okay, so
Under a
other DOT or other type grant programs, you would not be eligible for. The county would not be eligible to draw those funds down.
We would have to apply for those grants.
You would have to on our behalf, and it would be outsourced.
Okay, so technically, we might still be able to leverage other grants we're already getting to support Colts.
That's correct.
Okay. Second question, where's the savings? I'm peaked. My interest is peaked. I see $123,000 of immediate savings in the first year.
Right.
Yeah, how do you, or go back to your budget slide, how do you get that savings? Because I've been told by a bunch of experts that Lee County's Colt system is about as efficient as you can get for a program, that we're actually incredibly impressive in our efficiency, and I'm just curious, how are you going to get that kind of savings?
We're going to get these savings by many different factors. One is that dispatch, the way vehicles are dispatched. Today, in today's world, we have computerized dispatch, GPS on vehicles, onboard terminals, so that we can make adjustments to the schedule. We don't need 48 hours to book a trip, as it now occurs, which is a difficult thing for the citizens of Lee County. And that would be one of the areas. We know how to combine rides. We do this all the time. My associates here have run bus companies, and they know how to interchange routes, for instance, between counties. We're going to incentivize drivers. Drivers with the current FTI are not paid a salary. They're motivated because they are paid based on the efficiency of the day's trip. How much gas did you use? how many passengers did you move, and what was the efficiency. We're gonna put those same standards to use here. There's no motivation for an individual that is driving a van and in a queue to, be prompt. And this is an efficient, a motivating factor where we can, number one, save money, number two, improve the effectiveness of the service, and particularly the customer service.
What kind of cost to users would we be seeing? Increase, decrease, kept it the same?
Cost to users is going to be the same.
That's
We're
right.
going to use exactly the same. We are willing to take the existing budget minus the 20% right off the top and start off with 24/7 service. And we're so confident about the savings and some of the programs we have here that we feel that there's going to be significant savings at the end of the year in addition. But there's no question about the 20% because we're starting off without it, and we're going to provide a better service.
So you're gonna take
Commissioner,
the existing budget, knock 20% off what it started?
That's correct.
Right.
Then 1 year from that date, would you be back looking for an increase?
With 1 year from that date, I'd be possibly giving you another 5% from that budget. That's what I'm saying. That we would, in addition, we are so confident.
Do you use any kind of alternative fuel or anything? I mean, is there like gas or natural gas? Or
No,
nothing
Commissioner,
like that?
what you're failing to realize is we've always been used to having to do more with less. Simple. And one of the misconceptions that we have, or a lot of people have, is that with the increase of ADA eligibility, this means more vehicles with wheelchair lifts. And if you really look at it, if you had maybe 7 to 10 ADA eligible recipients, maybe 1 or 2 of them actually are wheelchair bound. So we know how to coordinate these trips and make it more efficient, cost efficient for the citizens as well as our own business.
Vehicles.
Vehicles
It's choosing the right vehicle.
for the right job.
So no, tell us about your fleet. What kind of fleet would you be proposing to replace the Colts fleet we have here?
We're getting ready to tell you everything here. I don't.
You better be quick, 'cause I'm gonna cut you off.
It's the same kind of judgment that you would make. May I,
Yes.
Madam Chairman?
There you go.
It would be certainly the same kind of judgment you make on your own. The only difference is we're doing, looking at it from the same principle. You certainly wouldn't take a larger vehicle to handle a smaller clientele. You make those judgments. The same thing is here. What's been happening in the past is that we order vehicles by the county. Those vehicles are utilized, whether it's one person or perhaps 15. In a case, especially on the conditions where you're talking about taking people back and forth to work, it has to be efficient. For the simple reason that if we pick up large volumes of personnel inside one vehicle, that vehicle is not capable, those people will have to stay on there for hours.
Right.
If we go back to smaller vehicles, utilize that time, think ahead, prepare, use the dispatch systems efficiently, make pre-planning, then we can keep more efficient vehicles, doing quicker jobs, providing more services, providing more jobs, and we already know we can do it for less. We've had to do it for years.
Can you name a town or a county that's similar to the size of Lee County that you're operating in now?
I can tell you a town and an operation we have in the past operated, Edgecombe, Nash, Rocky Mountain.
Did any of those revert back to government?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
Both.
And for what purpose?
Health problems with my father.
Okay.
Edgecombe and Johnson reverted back, is that what you're saying?
Sure. I was actually born in this building.
Right.
I'm a Lee County boy, but I moved from Lee County to Nash County back when I was 13 years old. My mother and my father created a transportation company there. I was always part of it. And they did do this very same thing in Edgecombe and Nash counties. Very successful with it. And due to the health problems of my father, we had to relinquish that. They retired, came to Sanford. My grandfather had the taxi cab business here. Obviously that brought my mother back into it. And I'm still in Rocky Mount, but I certainly do all I can to help mom.
I'd like to ask a question.
Grandfather's name?
Nady Ingle.
Ewing.
Question, please, Mr. Crumpton.
Ewing.
Just the process here. I noticed that, rather than for us to get into larger degrees of scrutiny here, it says that we'll refer to the Transportation Advisory Board, and they will take this, shake it up and down, and really get into all of the fine points of analysis, cost, benefit, and what have you. Will that then come back to us, or will it be folded into the budget? When will we see this again for the efficiency of this process?
Well, I'm not sure when you would see it again, but one thing that, because of the cost involved here, and you've got state dollars involved, any privatizing that you would do would have to be bid. And so, you want to do an analysis first to make sure going out to bid is what you want to do. Take an RFQ, and then take a look at that. And also, I think you would want the Transportation Advisory Board to take a look at other transportation systems across the state who have privatized, and there are some that have.
And this is on that track, and as this goes forward, we'll do just that. To save everybody time right now. I mean, this has a lot of places to go yet, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your
Very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we take a brief recess?
5 minutes. We'll recess for 5 minutes.
My purpose today is to present some ideas, and my requested action is to be referred to the county attorney for his input, and also to answer any questions that the board may have. I would like to say that, acknowledge that I am a Republican, and I'd like to assure the Democrats on the board that I will be as in the manner and mode of a chairman when it comes to impartiality dealing with this subject. I was college trained in parliamentary procedure, been a lifelong interest. It was the key to my advancement at an early age to major positions in the party. I'm the only person to have chaired 5 state Republican conventions. I think you're also the only 5 that finished on time. I have been invited to chair conventions in probably 1/5 of the counties, and I have served as a parliamentarian for a particularly contentious meeting in South Carolina. My purpose today is to give some suggestions that might be sure that the board is seen as doing the right thing the right way, as opposed to finding itself in a position of doing the right thing in the wrong way. Because one involves great more credibility with the public, it involves more transparency, more order and fairness. Now, the purpose of parliamentary procedure is to balance and protect the rights of the majority and minority of members. There's a balancing there that has to take place. And that's what normally is happening in a meeting where there's a convention of some kind or a regular meeting. When you get into a public body like this, you have to consider an additional need to maintain transparency, order, fairness, and to the public. So there's not only in your rules as they're written and as they're proposed, I'll pass these around. That's a different index. It's a little cleaned up. The purpose of this presentation is to suggest a couple of, first of all, suggest that the use of parliamentary procedure and the use of proper mental responsibility, the responsibility for the use of proper parliamentary procedure rests with each member of the board. It is no more the responsibility of the chairman than it is anyone else, although the chair has certain particular responsibilities in that regard. It's everybody's responsibility. With that in mind, I have proposed in a marked up version that I understand was available to you a number of changes, and they fall into several categories. One is really a major, perhaps major, policy decision. One is to clear up the procedures for members taking more responsibility. In some cases, we have proposed things that give the public more notice of actions than may be required by the law. And in some cases, I've simply made suggestions which I think would bring the procedures of the board in greater compliance. So with that in mind, I'll be glad at any time to ask questions. The parliamentary procedure is not as difficult, as technical as some people believe. One of the things that a good chairman has to do is to gauge the audience, to gauge the group he's going to be dealing with. And if it is a pretty homogeneous, settled group, then it's perfectly okay to be more informal. As it becomes a larger and more divided group, it is necessary to invoke the rules for what they were originally intended to, which is provide those protections and those assurances to the public. I'll simply say that I have listed the page number in which there's a note. Page 3 there's a provision relating to kinds of closed meetings you could have. One of the things that the county ethics policy lacks is any form of clarity about how does a citizen proceed if that citizen believes that there's been a breach of ethics. That's come up a lot lately in people calling me. The Board of Education has working its way a very clear procedure to it to make sure that any ethical considerations are, public is given a process for doing it. I think that can be done by an addition of words on page 3. In other cases, in talking about compliance with the open meeting law, has to do with the provision against doing any actions by reference. And what that specifically means is, if it's not in your packet, that sunshine packet that's gone out, and you're going to consider something for action, then there's a responsibility on the part of the body to furnish anyone in the room who requests it copies of the documents that are provided to the board or made, motion or whatever it is to provide that to the people in the room, since they did not have an opportunity to review it sooner. Another item, couple of items relate to transparency. You'll notice several of them say narrow action without public notice. There are times when the board could, under its current rules, would be necessary for it to act without an item that has been in the agenda. But there are other times when that action could be deferred, and these rules suggest ways in which that could be controlled, so that if there is an item that's on the agenda that the public doesn't know it needs to come here and present its opinions on, that it makes it a little tougher to consider those items, unless it says you can clearly do it as an emergency, but it says we're going to wait for public input if the public has not had an opportunity for input. A number of these things relate to the order of your meeting. One is very specific and very, very helpful. It provides that there's no discussion of an agenda item before there's a motion made to adopt it. That is the proper order of procedure. And at that time, there are rules and procedures about how long the debate may be and how much each member may participate and what order they may participate. There's also here, as I've heard today, an incorporation of things from Robert Rules of Order to make it more clearly accessible to you as to how to raise a point of procedure and how to appeal the decision in the case you disagree with it. This comes back to your responsibility to share in the responsibility of the chair to ensure that proper procedures are done. I wanted to quickly clarify one of the most common mistakes made. Calling the question in technical parliamentary procedure doesn't mean anything, but the individual calling it wants to say enough. In order to actually close debate under the rules, you have to have a vote. Normally, that's a 2/3 vote in most assemblies, but in ones which can be divided along potential lines, that's usually left to a majority vote. And it would have to be consistent. People would have had to have their opportunity to speak as provided in the rules, but it would provide a way to make clear what does it take to stop this and get on to business in the proper way. The final major change, I would comment in the order of procedure. It's very important. As I said, I've been in the attitude, the reason I've been called to these places to preside is, believe it or not, my ability to do so in at least a apparent, unbiased way. One important feature in our rules provides that once the motion is made, the chair may not participate in the discussion or debate. And should the chair wish to participate in discussion or debate, these rules provide that the chair should step aside and the vice chairman would assume, and she would remain, or he would remain in that position until the vote on that is taken. So I have here these suggestions and rules. I hope you will consider them seriously. I'm suggesting that you refer them to the county attorney. I think if he's busy and Mr. Hoyle's here part-time, he's probably involved in developing these rules. He would probably be a lot of help to you. But I think everyone's interest would be served by some adjustment to these rules, and I've taken the time to try to apply my experience in a way that I think would give this board a reputation for doing the right thing in the wrong way, in the right way, because you don't want, certainly the worst position is to be doing the right thing and having people concerned about it because you've done it the wrong way. I'll be glad to, it's your time, so I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Clark, is there anything sort of in summation that jumps out at you that you would say, if you had to list 1, 2, 3 of things that could be made better, improved? Would you sort of sum up in that way and say, here are things that would make it a better quality meeting that you have observed? You're here at just about all of our meetings. That you think really...
I think it is the requirement that there be a motion before there's discussion, and to follow the rules that have been adopted, or adopt new rules if you want to follow them, and follow that procedure. The second is not meant to be, the actions of the chair and this commission have been no different, basically, in terms of participating in debate and doing those kind of things than they were, Mr. Hayes, when you were chairman. That's why I said that sometimes you have to adjust to the circumstances that you're in. And this board seems to be in a circumstance where closer adherence to these things would perhaps produce other meetings. I think again, the desired result, which is the right actions done the right way. The second thing is the containing of debate to reasonable terms, and the chair's responsibility and every member's responsibility to make sure that decorum is maintained by the members. Your chairman did a good job of gaveling me out of order, and I was, and I apologize. That's the way it is. But each of you has a responsibility as a member to assist the chair in helping to maintain the order and decorum of the meeting. I can generally sum up by saying some of this does involve asking you to give up some flexibility, for example, in considering things, in order to have more opportunity for public involvement and transparency.
Madam Chair, I'd just like to make one comment. Of all of this material that Mr. Clark has presented, I found one nugget in there that I thought was instructive. The call to question seems to be a point of concern among some of the board members. And I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the separate handout he gave us. It's this package. Okay. The call to question point that he's making, I believe it's on page 10 of our order and his recommendations there. And I disagree with his recommendation, but he raises an important point, and that we have been abusing, and I'll readily admit, we've been abusing the call to question because it's really a motion of last resort to try to cut off debate and to move to a vote. And normally it's only done when there's been plenty of opportunity for the minority vote on the board, regardless of what party it is, the minority opinion to have been expressed properly. That's what Roberts defines. And we typically jump, once it sounds like we're repeating our points, typically one of the commissioners will say, call the question, so that we can move to a vote. When actually more appropriately, it's the point that should be made is a point of order, that we've already covered these points, or let's vote. Let's just ask for a vote, and then the chairman would make the decision. Once call the question is used, if we're going to use the procedure, then technically we need a supermajority. We need 5 of the 7 commissioners need to vote to cut off debate. And if you follow Roberts precisely, it'd be a standing vote. You would stand up and say, I agree to cut off debate. So it's a pretty serious motion. And I do agree with Mr. Clark that we probably haven't been following Roberts real closely with call the question. So I would just encourage the other commissioners in the future, and there's certainly nothing in our bylaws or our rules that require this to be changed, but let's just be a little more reticent to use the call the question motion, and instead let's just say, let's vote. We've recovered these points, let's vote. And then we would be in line with Roberts.
And I'm sure all of my colleagues received this book when you went through your commissioner training, and that's what I follow as the chair. It's very specific here about previous question that unless, it's not an order unless there's been 20 minutes of debate and every member has had an opportunity to speak, so.
I would like to address one thing if I could.
What's that?
The 20 minutes might be the problem.
Well, maybe we need to have.
Well, sometimes we haven't had 20.
Well,
That's the point.
I'd like just one thing to clarify for the benefit of the commission. I realize that you need to realize that you are not, you talk out of both sides of my mouth, had an operation at Duke, made that possible. The purpose of these rules, these separate rules from Robert, is to adjust, from Robert's, is to adjust to the particular situation of the nature of this board. Mr. Womack is of course right, he usually does his research. If he's not already familiar with it, it normally requires a supermajority to cut off debate. I'm not. The recommendation that I'm here making is simply saying that rather than one individual, which has been sort of the case, calling question and people feeling like, well, we're done, that what the procedure be was somebody move the previous question and it would take 5 members, four members, not 5. You're not required to be exactly lined up with Robert's Rules of Order in what you prescribe in your own rules. They do take precedence over Robert's Rules of Order. Mr. Talbot, I see nodding his head. So I don't feel that supermajority is in any way in order. Mr. Womack, I think you raised a good point. And what I frequently proposed is that if the majority of the board is ready to close debate, then that probably means the majority of the board's made up their mind. And if they've made up their mind, you may as well go ahead and vote, because the rules they have does say that everyone must have had an opportunity to speak on the issue. So I'm not going to, I'm not interested in debating that. I'll be glad to answer questions, but I just want you to understand the purpose of these rules is to give you flexibility that you don't have under Robert's Rules of Order, and to give you some specific rules that are not required in Robert's Rules of Order, because you are a public body and you operate under public meeting laws and so forth.
And I don't want to debate you on it. I'm just saying that the reason it's a motion of last resort, or a motion that is super sensitive, and the reason traditionally it has required a supermajority, is because you're basically cutting off or squelching comment by a sitting board on this commission. And I don't think that's an appropriate thing to do if a minority opinion has not been heard. If it becomes a 6-1 board at some point in the future, it's unfair and inequitable for us to cut off that one person's voice simply because we got 4 votes. It ought to require a 5-vote supermajority, in my opinion, because that's why the U.S. Senate does business the way it does, to allow the minority opinion to be heard, and so that the public is well served in that manner. So I would just encourage us to consider that in the future, if we're going to do the call to question, that we should probably consider that it should only be raised as a motion when we really seriously need to cut off debate and get on with a vote, and let's more appropriately just say let's vote.
Well, I guess everybody has their handout, so I would suggest that you all take a look at it. Mr. Talbot, you have it too?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chairman, I just share briefly one point of history regarding the purpose of the supermajority in the Senate. I think it'll be interesting to some, because I've studied the history of their parliamentary order. It used to be 2/3 vote, it's now down to 60.
Yeah.
The reason that's there, as frustrating as it may be to whoever has control and we're on the other side, was specifically because the Senate, in its original structure of the Constitution, the Senate was designed to be a check on the House of Representatives and quick changes in government and public policy. And so they have always been a body that, by design of the Constitution, the reason the supermajorities were imposed to start with was exactly for the purpose of allowing a minority to thwart the will of the minority, of the majority, because founding fathers didn't envision all this law being passed, and they wanted to have something to slow it down. They were scared of that.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Dwayne, you're on next. Presentation regarding the 2013 revaluation project.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Board of Commissioners. I'm going to present to you an introduction to the 2013 revaluation project. I gave this exact presentation at lunch at the chamber meeting. Went very well. So I'm giving it again tonight. I know it's a little redundant for a few of you, but it's definitely exciting. They say time flies when you're having fun, so I'm sure this will last a couple hours. Let's get started here.
Good humor.
That's right. Why have a revaluation? We've heard this before. The statutes mandate it. Counties in North Carolina have to do a revaluation at least once every 8 years. The majority of the counties have advanced that schedule and do it about every 4 years. Lee County is on a 4-year schedule. But for this revaluation, it'll be 6 years. The last time we did it was 2007. Next time will be 2013. The purpose of a revaluation is not to raise taxes. It is to equalize the tax base. You have neighborhoods in Lee County that are appreciating or depreciating at different rates. Even properties within the same neighborhoods, because of deferred maintenance or whatever it may be, may appreciate or depreciate at different rates. So when you do a revaluation, it brings everything up or down to current market value. Between revaluations, that value sticks. We can't change it in the non-revaluation year. So that's the main purpose of a reval, is to equalize everything. And again, the revaluation, it's a snapshot of one's property value. The tax assessment is good for only the date of revaluation. So right now, our tax assessments are January 1, 2007. That's the market value of every property in Lee County as of January 1, 2007. The same thing will happen January 1, 2013. Now, you get a tax bill, and there's a lot of confusion. I try to do this presentation every year, and I heard some confusion from the public because I think it was 09 or 10 when I presented this. They said, well, why did the tax office misassess the properties in 09 or 010? Why is it so far below market value? And my best answer to that is that there are no 2009 and 2010 tax assessments. You have 2007 tax assessments that are billed in 2008 and 2009, all the way up until the next revaluation. So those tax bills are based on January 1, 2007. And you compare that value as of 2007 with the 2010 sales and the 2011 sales. And assuming an appreciating market, the tax value is going to be lower than market value. And that's where we are on some classes of property too. A comparison grid of the single property appraisal versus a mass appraisal. Single property appraisal requires only 3 comparable sales. You like to have at least 3. The more you can get, the better. 5, 6, that'd be really good. The mass appraisal, you want as many sales as you can get. You're modeling this data, so you need a whole bunch of sales. Single property appraisal, the appraiser himself or herself adjusts for differences between the subject property and the 3, 5, 6 comparable sales. And that's based on experience, expert judgment, things like that. In mass appraisal, we have models for groups of properties. And simplistically, it's a multiple regression analysis that tells us, based on this data, that a bathroom is worth, say, $1,500 or $2,000. So we're relying on the data itself to tell us the necessary adjustments. Single property appraisal, you want sales. Most banks want sales within the last 6 months. They want recent data. Some go out to a year. With mass appraisal, we can trend. We can take a sale, if we really need to, we can take a sale from 2008 or 2009 and trend it to 2013. But we have to do that via a paired sales analysis. We can't just pull it out of the air. But we can use older sales. It still results in an accurate figure.
So,
Dwayne, I'm sorry, go ahead.
on the left, let's say I'm going to refinance my house, and so I go to BB&T and they get their appraisal, and it comes back, and it might be $75,000 below what my tax value is. And a lot of people don't understand that. They can't figure out how that can be, but they need to realize that January 1st, 2007 was when the snapshot of my property was, and I can't adjust it up or down.
That's right.
And the county can't.
That's right.
Hey, Dwayne, help people understand what you mean by trending. For example, if a house sold in 2007 for $100,000 and a comparable house sold in 2010 for $105,000, and then we're looking at 2013, 3 years later, would trending be like assuming it would go up another 5%?
Well, what you do is you have, like you said, 2 comparable sales, highly comparable properties that sold across multiple years. So 2008, you might have a sale in the same house, if you're lucky, might sell in 2011 or 2012. And if it does, you can establish a yearly percent of increase or even a monthly percent of increase. And from that, you can take a group of comparable properties and adjust it or trend it to 2013. So it's a time adjustment.
Right. Do you use trending up and down?
Absolutely, if it's necessary.
All right.
Whichever way the trending goes.
All right.
Yes. The process, we hear a lot about the sales in the market. And the appraisal profession, us included, there are 3 approaches to value. And this is what we do to use all 3 approaches to value. First of all, we go out and compile sales information. And we've been doing that since the last revaluation in 2007, qualifying sales as they come through and putting them in a bank, more or less, to use in the upcoming revaluation. That's the sales comparison approach. That's used mainly for residential houses, properties where people are going to live in and use for residential purposes. The next approach is the income approach, and we use that by gathering the income and expense information from the market. This is usually used mainly in the commercial sector, income producing properties. People buy these properties to produce an income, so our job is to go in and estimate the market income for those types of properties and capitalize that into an estimate of value. So if you have a commercial property, it may or may not be affected by a sale. It's not the predominant use used in income producing property. And the last one is the cost approach. Those are for highly complex properties. Pfizer, Coty, the big industrial plants are great examples. Properties that aren't going to sell, there's really no market for them, and properties where you really can't estimate income. It'd be extremely difficult. So you estimate the cost to replace that improvement, less depreciation, and add back in the land value. So we like to take all 3 of those approaches and reconcile and come up with a final estimate of value. The way we get, or the way we ensure accuracy of our current records, we have a lot of means. We have our GIS department, which obviously we can look at aerials, recent aerials of that. We do field reviews of properties, and we have on our website a tax evasion form. And that is used very frequently. We get a lot of good information out of that tax evasion form, and it's anonymous. People can go in there, fill out the form, say, hey, my neighbor's built a chicken house, and he or she's not being taxed for it. And it just ensures equity. It's a way for us to get information from the public. After we gather all this information, ensure our records are accurate, we apply those findings to all properties across Lee County as of our appraisal date, January 1, 2013. This is probably the most confusing subject and the most frequently asked question we get, and it relates to the effective date of revaluation. Our last revaluation was January 1, 2007. And we have appraisals, and I want to elaborate on your point, Mrs. Shook. We have appraisals come in all the time in 2010, 2011. We had a lot last year. And they indicate a different value than what we have on the tax books. And it's not that we necessarily disagree, it's that we're looking at 2 different appraisal dates. Our appraisal date's January 1, 2007 right now, and they're coming in, some of them with lower bank appraisals that were done in 2009 and 2010. And it's different appraisal dates. It's apples and oranges. If they wanted to be successful, you have to compare it to our January 1, 2007 value. And that's what a lot of people get confused about. Cannot adjust tax values in a non-revaluation year. That's the statute that governs that for economic conditions, whether they be up or down. We can't adjust tax values. Now, if somebody goes out there and adds a swimming pool or adds a 2,000 square foot dance room to their house, physical changes, we can do it then. But for the economy, if it tanks or if it's booming, we can't touch the tax values. There are 5 different numbers on this chart I want to show you. This is a graph of the 2011 sales up through the latter part of 2011. And these are all qualified sales. First of all, I want to show you the number of sales. When I brought it to you last year, you can see that we went from 405 sales to 323 sales from 09 to 10, and we were worried. I mean, you got to have a lot of sales to do a successful revaluation. It jumped up a little this year. It went to 373, which is a good sign. The market's improving. At least the number of transactions are improving. The vacant sales, the median sales ratio on the vacant land sales decreased in 2011. It's at almost 87%, which is saying that tax values are about 13% below what the current vacant land sales are selling for. And these are sales that are happening, sales that we've qualified. And we're about 13% below on vacant land sales.
Dwayne, can you explain to the group that the qualified sales, that you're not using short sales or foreclosures?
Absolutely. We have to use, every county in the state has to use what they call, they have to estimate true value in money. And foreclosure sales, short sales, those are based on what they call investment value. Mainly, investors go in and buy those properties, which require a lot of capital, special financing. You even get a special warranty deed when you buy a foreclosure property. It's not the same warranties included. And you go in there expecting problems in a foreclosure property. You want a deal when you buy a foreclosure property. So we don't use that. Nobody in the state uses a foreclosure sale. I told them today, I guess we could, but somehow, some way, we'd have to bring that foreclosure sale up to its market value, kind of a turnkey operation. If they were to fix up the foreclosure, put it back on the market, what would it sell for? But generally, no, we don't use foreclosure sales, distress sales. My dad would sell me a piece of property for much less, I hope, than he would for someone off the street. So between relatives, any of those types of sales, it has to be a good transaction for us to use. And if we don't capture good transactions, that's going to throw the whole county model off. So we want to make sure our county records are straight and that we have good, accurate sales. Same thing with commercial sales. We're about 88% in the sales ratio on commercial sales, about 12% under the current market. And like I said, this includes your fast food, your retail, a lot of different types of commercial. And if you look at the number of sales, you've only got 22 commercial sales in 2011. So we might have to expand out to a regional approach, but we are under in Lee County nonetheless. The price-related differential on both vacant land and commercial sales indicates that the normal range is between 0.98 and 1.03. We are way over on both of those, which means that the higher value properties are underappraised. So we've got a lot of work in the revaluation on those two categories, both in the sales ratio and in the ERD data. It's got a little lag to it. Okay, key dates. Right now we are reviewing our data and starting to price the land. And from there we'll move on to the improvements and a holistic approach to each property and look at the whole property value in groups. The schedule of values. Our timeline right now says that we're going to take it before the Board of Commissioners and start the adoption process in October. I would love to have that in August. I think that's a little ambitious, but I would love to have that before this body in August to start the adoption process.
Let me ask you about that. Okay, so I have not been through this before. Any commissioners on here that went through the adoption process other than?
My first year on the board.
Was it?
I
Okay.
used my old house as an example. It was like $100,000 more than it should have been, so.
Right, well, I guess I'm just curious about what we're going to be asked to contemplate. And maybe Commissioner Reeves or Commissioner Pascal, who've been through this a few times, can comment on it. I'm just curious about what we're going to be presented, what we're going to be expected to do, and how compelling is that process? Is it something that we have to spend a lot of time and energy on?
What we do is bring you a book. It has a value for a bathroom in a C-grade house, and it's more or less an open document that the public can inspect. It has the same appeal process that you have for if they want to appeal their property. So part of that adoption process, when the board receives the schedule of values, we put it on public inspection. It'll be with the clerk, we'll probably put it in the library, and the public can go in and inspect that document. If they want to appeal that, we have a public hearing with the Board of Commissioners, and there's an appeal process with the State Property Tax Commission.
And we have to approve the values or the thresholds that you're establishing at that point?
It's not the values per se. It's we have a wide range of values in the schedule of values. Now, you won't see the actual values of each property until January 2013 or March of 2013. So what you're looking at is a huge document listing values, price per square foot of an average house. And like I said, the members of the public can come in and comment on that, your real estate professionals and building professionals.
Is this personalized to Sanford and Lee County?
It is.
So that we would know this neighborhood's going to have this kind of valuation as opposed to another neighborhood?
We develop the schedule of values based on Lee County data. We won't break it down by neighborhood. We can show you the sales ratio by neighborhood, which give you an indication. But as far as applying the schedule of values to each property, we can't do that until the adoption process is complete and we send out those letters. We can
So these
test
are-
it and all, but we can't make it public information.
So you're basically saying this is going to be kind of a generic book that establishes our schedule of values, but doesn't really personalize it down to specific areas of the county.
Right, we take that schedule of values and apply that to every Lee County property.
Is this a step that's required by law?
It is.
And you said minimum time for adoption is 52 days. What drives that?
I should have brought the schedule. You have to post it 21 days. You have to put it on file with the clerk 21 days before it's considered a public hearing for the Board of Commissioners. And then there's due process given to the taxpayers to inspect the document and appeal the document. So it's mainly due process to the citizens, so they can come in and look at the document and make sure they agree with it.
When we went through this in '07, did you guys have a lot of inspection and comment? Or was this something that was pretty much?
To be honest with you, I was so overwhelmed with the big, thick document that I didn't do as much investigating then as I should have. But
Who would normally, I mean, is it real estate people who are really into this that would come in and perhaps raise questions or challenge as opposed to the average citizen?
Well, they could. They absolutely could, and they'd probably be more likely. The number of people that have appealed the schedule of values is so minimal that it's on a single spreadsheet. I believe I saw something from the Department of Revenue listing when the schedule of values was appealed, which county and for what reason. So it just really doesn't happen because you take the schedule of values and apply it to each property.
It's the application that's going to raise the issue. Yeah.
And they have another appeal process after the application too.
Well, that's important.
Yeah, and the real estate professionals, building professionals, we're trying to keep everybody in the loop as much as we can. So nothing, hopefully, is going to be a surprise to them or anybody. Again, new value letters will be sent between January 2013 and March 2013. And the appeal process. We start informally. If they have a issue with their value, their new tax assessment, they come in and meet with our appraisers. If we can't come to a resolution, then they go to the Board of B&R and on from there. The resources. I said today that I think a lot of counties focus too much on the science of a revaluation. I think if they get the value of a property correct, 100% accurate, that everything's okay. That's not our approach. We want to focus a lot on the art of a revaluation too. So we want to get the values right, but we want to involve the community in this process so that in January or March of 2013, when they get that new value letter, that's not going to be the first time they hear from us. So we're trying to go out there and do creative things, spread the word about the revaluation, and just involve the community every step of the way. We're doing we did a YouTube revaluation video. We had one take on that, which I sent to the board, and there was a lag between audio and video. We did another one that looks much better. We have it on our YouTube channel, and you can see our YouTube channel has had 963 views. So people are going out there and looking at this stuff. Not one person might not use YouTube, but it is out there. You've got Facebook out there. We're going to have the media's done a good job with getting the word out about the revaluation. So we're using all these resources, trying to cover everybody.
You haven't tweeted it or put it on Farmville yet?
No,
Okay.
not on Farmville.
All right.
But we do have a Twitter page that it goes to. This is our government channel, and you can see that, I guess it doesn't quite show it here, but there it is, right at the bottom. And this was done a little early, but we've had 50 views on this reval video, and I posted it Friday about lunchtime. So I'm hoping to get even more word out about this. I think it's a really good resource, a 24/7 resource for the public that might not work an 8 to 5 schedule, or that might not can attend our community presentations. So it's out there for viewing. Our Facebook page, and there are the addresses for each right here. Our Facebook page, we're feeding a lot of information through there. Not only the tax office, Parks and Recreation, Library, the entire county government. If there's something important, we're trying to put it on there and inform the citizens. And you can see once we posted to YouTube, this is the neat thing about our social network. We only posted to one place, and it hits all these different sites. We posted this to YouTube, it's on our Facebook page. It's on our blog, it's on Twitter. So it's there. Regardless which one you want to use, it's there. And you can see at the bottom, we have 747 people that like our Facebook page, which means they receive updates from our Facebook page when we post new stuff. So we're getting there. We have a following. Just a couple more, maybe narrated PowerPoints, definitely community presentations. We're going to get out there, do a couple of those, take a question and answer session, and hear what the community has to say. Frequently asked questions handout, which I believe is included in your packet. We developed that from some journals that we had and from some other county resources that we came across. It's going to be available at the Government Center and at the main library. I think I'm going to make it to a brochure, but it's going to be available at least at those two places. And that's all I have. Any questions from the board?
One of the backup one, you had the Government Center, library. How about the senior building?
Absolutely. That's a good idea. Yep. And we're going to the Senior Center Friday to give this same presentation again, too. So we're trying to get out there and be transparent and open and let them know what's going on. That's a good suggestion.
Good job. I want to go on record as saying that I think you're doing a magnificent job as a tax officer for the county, and that your zeal for putting things in technology is good for the younger generation and for some of the older ones. I heard a comment at the chamber luncheon today that said, well, you know, a lot of folks don't use that technology. Well, I know a lot of widows and fixed income seniors around the community that are using YouTube and do watch Facebook. So keep doing that. That's important, and that helps get the word out.
Well, it's not one resource that everybody uses.
Yeah.
So not everybody's going to use YouTube, but some people do. Obviously, we got 963 views on our channel. So, and we have a really good staff in the tax office. Not just me. We have an incredible staff that does an incredible job.
Bob Joyce made a comment at lunch today that I thought was pretty appropriate too. You know, there's a lot of people that are out there that think, well, anytime you're doing a reval, you're automatically going to raise taxes. And he was very good about injecting this afternoon. This is really about leveling the playing field. This is about making sure that everybody's paying the appropriate, equitable share of the taxes, as opposed to, you know, having imbalance with who's paying more and who's paying less. And we've got to do it by law. Mm-hmm. And I think Bob's point was, you know, we need to go ahead and do it now, and it's a good time to do it right now while property values haven't recovered from the downturn in the economy. It's a good time for taxpayers to get that to lock in that reval at this point. Right. Now, it may not be good for the tax revenues, and then we got to deal with that. But you know, keeping the valuations down is good for some people in the county.
Yeah. And Mrs. Shook, you asked me at the meeting about some numbers.
I was just curious if you had a tax base for the vacant sales.
We do. Speaking about the good staff, she was able to get that to me in no time. For the vacant land sales, and I was talking about the sales ratio and how far underappraised we are right now based on 2007 values. Vacant land sales, the total taxable base without exemptions, is about $477 million. Wow. The commercial land, well, improvements and vacant land, anything coded commercial, it's over $866 million. So those are your two categories that, based on our 2011 data compared with our 2007 tax values, those are the two that are underappraised right now.
And that's as I recall, that's about 30% of our tax base. Based on what you just quoted, that's 477 would be 10%, and 800 would be something shy of 20. That's pretty significant.
30%.
Yeah.
Good job. I learned something else new today that I didn't know. They were reading your little bio. They said that you and your wife are going to be parents for the first. Do you want to make that announcement?
Yeah, we just made that announcement last week, I think it was. But yeah, we're expecting our first child.
Congratulations.
Had a lot happen over the last year, and it's good news. We're both excited about it. My younger brother has 3 boys, and my wife's sister has a boy. So a girl will be the only first that we could have. Be happy either way. But you know, we're very excited about the process, and it's going to be an experience for both of us, life changing. But yeah, late July, early August.
Congratulations.
We're carrying those Pepsi Colas home.
You still got your Rottweilers?
I do. I do. Sure do.
Thank you, Dwayne. Okay, Doc, you had requested that one item be moved from the
Yes, ma'am.
consent agenda. That was item B, I think, so. Appointment to the rest home nursing home.
I want to see us discuss that just a moment.
Okay.
Pages 8.
Charlie still with us?
Charlie, are you there?
Get a pulse. What page?
We're on page 8. Yeah. Madam Chair, what I saw was one application, and I'd like to see it re-advertised and see if we get some more applications for that board, if the board goes along with that. And, you know, we're missing several.
How many are we missing total, Gaynell?
4 vacancies.
4 vacancies, that's right. And the other question I had is, we got one that served as an alternate. Has he been contacted about moving on into a permanent member?
I haven't contacted him, but I will.
Now, was that recent?
Just looking at the,
Because I thought didn't Richard make a motion at one of our earlier meetings that all the standing, or somebody did, I thought, all the standing alternates would be moved up to full-time? Didn't somebody motion that?
yeah.
Actually, that's the way we're supposed to do it.
Right.
That's why we have them in.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, if they want to move up, okay.
Yeah, I'd like to see someone make contact with Mr. Hooker to see if he's willing to move up to permanent. And then I'd like to see us postpone this application and advertise and see if we can get some more applications for this particular board.
I don't have it in front of me, but I think there was more than one vacancy there, is there not?
Oh, yes, there's about 4, Charlie.
So the thing is that, yeah, I'd like to see Willard get back on it, but I don't know that we don't have enough vacancies to go ahead and appoint one.
What's he saying?
He's just saying, why don't we go ahead and appoint her, because there's still three other vacancies, is his point.
Well, the other thing I was looking at,
Is there something about this particular
well, the old
individual?
lady,
that's
I noticed that
objectionable?
she's only been a resident of Lee County for a year and a half.
But is there taxes paid?
That's the next question.
Taxes are paid, that's a big check right there.
It's pleasure to the board, whatever the board wants to do, I'm fine with it.
Commissioner Reeves, you always have something good to say about these kind of issues. What's your thoughts?
Well, she has to meet the same criteria as anyone else applying, and goes through the same procedure. Time here is not necessarily an issue. She is a Lee County taxpayer and eligible to participate. I would suggest that we go ahead and appoint that person and still run an ad.
And move see if Mr. Hooker will move up.
That's correct.
Yeah, sure.
I'm fine with that.
Charlie, you serve on that board. Are you okay with that?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the motion.
Actually, the board has decided, well, we haven't made the motion yet, but to accept this person and to ask one of the alternates, Mr. Hooker, if he wants to move up. And how many, Gaynell, does that still leave us as vacant?
You'd have to.
Be 2 if he moved up.
Right.
Okay.
We have 5 right now, and if he moves up, then you put this lady in, there'll be 3 vacancies.
I thought there were 4.
And there's 3 on page 10 and 2 on page 11.
So can someone give me a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we go ahead and appoint Miss Carol J. Villiers to the Rest Home Advisory Board, and that we re-advertise to try to get more citizen involvement and fill in those other vacancies.
And that assumes that we'll follow our current policy of asking Mr. Hooker.
Oh, I'm sorry, and in addition, asking Mr. Hooker to go ahead and move up to a full-time permanent position.
Okay, did you hear that motion, Charlie?
I didn't restate it for me, would you please?
Okay, Madam Chair, I move that we go ahead and appoint Miss Carol Villiers to the Rest Home Advisory Board, that we re-advertise to get more citizen involvement in that board, and that we ask Mr. Hooker to move up from the alternate position into a primary position.
Did you get that, Charlie?
Yeah, that's, yes.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Okay. And manager's report, Mr. Compton?
Yes, ma'am. I want to discuss Ms. Barber's comments that were made today. I can tell you right now, the staff is not happy with the way the public information has been going lately in the requests. And it's been very stressful for the staff. I think that the county needs to review how we handle these requests, because I can tell you that with the number of requests that we are getting, mistakes are going to be made going forward. We don't have the staff in place to handle the volume that is coming our way. Mr. Womack asked for an explanation as to why the CD was released without review, and to be quite frank, it was just a mistake on staff's part. There were 4 requests from Mr. Clark at that time, and the CD was released. I can't give a better explanation than that. But we apologize to Mr. Womack. There are emails that are personal in nature that were released. I don't think any laws were violated in what I've been able to look through so far. But it's been a difficult situation. I think the board needs to review it.
Madam Chair, if I might make a comment, I would, there have been a lot of anxious moments on a lot of our parts over the last few weeks related to emails, whether they were public or private. And I've had some strong words. I readily admit that I've had some strong words about this thing because it affected me both personally and privately, as well as my public life here. I'm not happy at all that any of this stuff was published, and I'm not happy at all that mistakes were made, but they do happen. I would just suggest that, and I would appeal to the public, that we're at a point now where we're at the height of the political season for 2012, and we're at a crossroads where we can let this kind of sniping, political sniping, and gotcha politics dominate what we do as a board. Or we could take a departure from politics as usual and say we're going to rise above that this year. And we're not going to play gotcha politics. And we're not going to go out there fishing for people's emails to try to find something to publicly embarrass or diminish the reputation of a candidate for public office. We're at that crossroads right now, and all of us have a play in that. I would suggest that I thank you, Mr. Crumpton, for your apology, and I apologize to anybody for any ruffled feathers and for hurt feelings myself. For my strong language, I will just tell you that we can all rise above this and make this about the issues in 2012, and then let this board do its job. And I would just challenge everybody else. I'm going to make a concerted effort to stop using email and to stop, participating in this kind of a conversation back and forth, even in my private emails, as much as possible, so that we can let the issues be what we focus on this year, and so that this board can be about the people's business instead of having to deal with who's one-upping the other. And I would just challenge the rest of the board and the public that let's make it about the issues this year.
Well, before we do that, why don't you apologize to the staff that you know you've already offended?
I think I just did that.
Get it over with. You did it.
Well,
Be specific.
You want to give me the words to say? Is that
Yes, sir. Apologize to the county attorney and the county manager personally. Those two in particular. Mr. Hall is not here anymore.
I've already spoken to Mr. Hoyle.
Well, then you speak to these two publicly if you really mean what you say.
So I guess what you're asking me to do is to.
If you're going to
put
wear
words
me
in
out
my
with
mouth.
questions, just forget.
No, I'm just wanting to know what's your threshold?
These two.
What's your threshold? What's your threshold?
These two.
You want me to apologize
I do.
to these two individuals?
I feel like you should.
I will apologize to these two individuals in private for the actions that I have taken.
Private. All right.
And this is just the point I was trying to make. Are we going to make this about what someone's threshold or standard is or for political purposes? Or are we going to make this about what do we need to do as a board? What do we need to do as individuals with each other?
Listen, my friend, I care so little about politics right now, it's unreal. I simply ask you as a man who offended, I know, 2 people. I don't include myself, I can handle me. But I'm just saying to you, if you mean what you say, apologize to these 2 staff members.
Mr. Talbert, if we could make eye contact.
Yes, sir.
I apologize to you for anything I did or said to you that offended you. Mr. Crumpton, I apologize to you for anything I said or did to you that offended you in any way.
I accept your apology, and I hope you'll accept mine. It's been a difficult 3 weeks, for me personally as well. I think Mr. Towler and I and my staff in general have worked hard the last 4.5 years since I've been here to improve the morale, the reputation of the county. And I can tell you this whole situation, our politics here gives this county a black eye sometimes. And if we would just stick to the issues and think about what's best for the citizens of this county, we could get over that. We're going to have differences. The board's going to have differences. I expect those differences. But when it starts to get personal, and it's no longer politics and it's no longer issues, it affects everybody. And I think that we can get over that. And I think we need to work towards that.
Mr.
Right
Hayes,
there.
before you speak, I didn't want my silence to be misinterpreted. I certainly accept your apologies to the extent they were required, Commissioner Lindell.
Charlie, what was that?
Charlie, second,
That was a flush.
Was it?
No. I just wanted to add this, that I would hope that the word would go out to all of our friends and people out there that we are going to be scrupulous to stay within the law and the open information that we are commanded to do. But I would hope that we would be able to discourage people from this muckraking and the very thing that has put us in this position. And I think we can really encourage people to stop this. It's wasteful. It's really bringing morale down. And we know who people are who are on the chain of these, both sides. But I think we really ought to encourage this to stop right now. We've got to pay attention to it if it comes down the pike. But if you go back just a few months ago, it was a pretty decent kind of thing. I mean, people from time to time had a question and they wanted to see something and would get out a copy or two. But this has just gone viral, as they say, and it's totally ridiculous and over the hill. So I would just like to encourage us to send the word out in our different ways to our different constituents to please, let's cool it, keep our mind on our community business, and put this behind us. And I appreciate myself personally this dialogue, and I think it puts a lot of things to rest once we sort of come to admit that these things get out of hand, and we got bigger, more important things to do.
I think there are lessons to be learned of this for everybody. I know that there have been times when maybe I've been upset with Mr. Crumpton. I've come in and told him I didn't agree with something, but I think it's important for us to one-on-one with somebody. When you have a problem with somebody, sit down and tell them what your problem is. Number 2, I learned my lesson about 3 years ago. I use email as little as possible because the same individual made me a victim. My husband and I had to spend over $1,000 to hire an attorney to keep us from being slandered and libelous stuff on his blog. So, I have no sympathy. In fact, I keep him in my prayers because the Bible says don't pray for your enemies, against your enemies, pray for them. And those that decide to try to publicly, so I keep him in my prayers. That's sometimes a challenge for me, but I think as a Christian I do that. And I think that we can all learn something about this. I think from the county's point of view, an internal control system. But something I would like for the county to disclose to the public is the amount of information requested by this one individual that, you know, and the amount of cost to the county for complying with this fishing expedition, and that's what I'll say it is, so.
Well, I do think that, I think our new policy that we adopted on November 17th had good intentions. I do think that last week, Mr. Talbert and I really struggled with sending that letter to Ms. Barber. I mean, that was a whopping number for somebody who really probably should have access to that information.
And you can waive it, you have the power to waive a fee, right?
This board can
waive the fee as well.
Now,
but I also want to be upfront that, you know, the law says that just because we made the mistake one time, we shouldn't be making the mistake a second time.
That's right.
So we need to go through those emails. And I will say that some of those emails were very private to Mr. Womack as I was reviewing them today. Actually right before this meeting coming in here. So that, you know, we should not make that same mistake again. I think staff was trying to get information out to people and be quick with results. We were trying to be transparent, and we just got, you know, too quick, too careless. Gaynell does have a numbering system. We're going to use that numbering system for each request, log that request in, and then when we turn that request back to her, it has to have that same number on it so we know that we're releasing the right information to the public.
Wasn't some of this rescinded or somebody who asked for more information? Then with the new policy that we've put in place, they said, well, forget it, so they backed off.
Well, Mr. Clark changed his
so it's working. It's discouraging.
It discouraged him, but then you have Mr. Staley, Miss Barber, and probably Mr. Clark to some extent, who still would like to get information that they're entitled to, and we've kind of thwarted that with the fee, and I don't know that that's really the intention.
The intent was never to thwart any information flow. The intent was to be able to recover for the very extensive time it takes for the attorney, the IT manager, the county manager, and the county clerk to have to process these things. I mean, we're talking about, in some cases, potentially 100 hours of staff time committed to that. I mean, if more than a dozen citizens in this county started doing it, we'd be overwhelmed. And so the idea is equity and fairness. And I guess for Miss Barber's concern, I think she was genuine and sincere today when she spoke. I think what she's really after is she thinks that obviously she thinks there's something sinister going on, because she knows that there are emails that she sent to me that are on that CD, and we've got someone out there that got it for free, and she can't see just what he might use against her. And so I guess the point is that to be equitable, what we really ought to do is go ahead and go through those emails, and then maybe as this board waive the fee so she can at least have the same thing he's got. You know, I mean, that would only be.
And I also think that probably should waive. We probably need to get your permission to do this. Any of the emails that were personal in nature between you and Ms. Barber, she should be allowed to know that those were released as well.
Yeah.
So she does know that information has been released. I think that's fair to her.
The other thing we got to do, Mr. Manager, is we got to find a way that the public is notified that if they send us a confidential email, any commissioner on this board, if they send us an email that's got private or sensitive information in it, that they have a right to anticipate that it'll be protected, that we'll review it per the general statutes, and that we will not unknowingly release something that would be in violation or that would compromise them, put their jobs at risk or anything else. Otherwise, we're going to have a complete cutoff of email traffic back and forth from our citizens.
The only comment I would make there, Commissioner Womack, is that we can only withhold two categories of information. One category is the contents of which have been made privileged or confidential by a specifically identifiable statute. Secondly, we can withhold communications that do not concern the transaction of public business.
Right.
Sometimes the line to be discerned in personal versus public business communications is difficult. That will require not only a withholding of the document itself, we're talking about emails, let's say an email, but potentially redacting manually portions of that email. So two kinds.
That's a lot
Statutory.
more staff time and effort to do that.
Yes, sir.
It's easier to delete one rather than to have to redact it and make it compliant. So that's a lot of effort. People need to recognize that. But I do think that in the interest of Ms. Barber's concerns as a citizen and as an active citizen that frequently comes to these meetings and frequently stays engaged in public life, that we should find a way. In fact, Madam Chair, I would move that we waive the fee, that we go ahead and commit the staff time to review that CD, identify those emails that are in there that shouldn't be releasable, give her that CD free of charge so that she's got at least what's already in the public domain, and that if we find something in there that's sensitive or confidential, HIPAA violation or other type of activity, that we notify Mr. Clark and ask him to return that CD so we can give him one that where he has the emails that he can have.
I'd like to raise a question about this motion. I wanted to say before he raised that I'd like to, as I have, trusted the county manager and our attorney to be scrupulous in their examination of all of these kinds of things and come back to us with a recommendation as to what would be the course of action they would recommend. I mean, they're paid to give us the best advice they have. I don't understand all of the fine points of the Barba issue. I get a sense of it, but I think rather than just to say, let's waive it and be done with it, I'd like to know personally more about it, and so that I would have the feeling these two gentlemen would say, these are the key issues, this is where we have come down, this is clean, and this is our recommendation to do it or not to do it. And that's true on any of these types of open information things that come along. I listen carefully to what you two guys say, because we get carried away in our own emotions and our own biases, even though we don't like to admit it, or the strengths of our voices. I'd like for you to calmly look at these issues and say, this is right, this is the way it should be. I'd put a whole lot of stock in that rather than quickly say, let's just approve it right now. I couldn't vote and support it right now.
I support the motion, giving us the opportunity to go through it and provide her the information. I think it's the right thing to do. I do want to caution, there was some discussions about what types of communication would be considered personal or confidential, and I think there might be some misunderstanding there. I think we may have to have a review on those types of things, because if I think the example was given in the email, what if somebody sends us some information that might be criminal in nature and is accusing somebody of fraud or something like that? Believe it or not, that information is not protected.
And the citizens need to know that. They need to know that.
So my advice to them is, don't send an email. You need to pick up the phone. You need some investigations have some kind of confidentiality through the district attorney or through law enforcement, but we don't have those protections as a board of elected county commissioners. And there are a lot of those types of exceptions where the statute might give one group of people protection, from having to release those records. But if we end up with those records, they're no longer confidential. So, we have to be very careful, and the public needs to be very careful as well in what they send us. And I think it was said earlier, one of the lost things is the communication face to face. And I would tell you that if I had a real problem and wanted to report it, I would go find someone to give it to face and not send an email. So that would be my advice to the public.
With respect to the legal requirements, she certainly is entitled to any public record we have. It's possible for her, though, to voluntarily amend her request in a way that she may be able to get all of that information she wants that wouldn't require such an extensive review. For example, she could request emails sent from whatever email addresses she uses to whatever email addresses she uses to contact Commissioner Womack, if that's where she thinks the information lies. That is likely to significantly reduce the burden on staff.
But as you well know, that really won't satisfy her concern, because as we all have experienced, you can have an email titled by one with one subject line forwarded from one person that later on gets commingled with another email. So you'd have to look through every email anyway to know that you've captured all of it.
It's very interesting as you go through the appliance that we purchased picks up everything. I mean, it very rarely misses anything when you do a query into it.
To include the body of the email down inside the body?
It can do that. It can sort by many different factors, including date range, to, from, CCs, blind CCs, things of that nature. But I understand its primary function and its only ability is to pick up emails that came through the county server, which would require at least one person among the senders or recipients to have a county email account. So that's why I'm thinking it's possible.
Yeah, I'll just say that obviously I can't speak for her, but I've seen the emails from her complaining about this, and I think I've got a motion on the table to go ahead and waive the fee and screen the CD the way we should have, and the way we really still need to do, so that we can properly notify Mr. Clark if he's got a CD with stuff that he doesn't need to have, that he's cautioned not to use that the mistake cannot be compounded by him then having something in the public domain and using it for other purposes. And then we can give her some assurance that she's got everything that she's eligible to have at no cost.
From a legal perspective, I'm not sure this board or the staff has any legal authority to give Mr. Clark advice.
No, I'm not suggesting we advise him in that way. I'm suggesting that we go back and notify him we need the CD back, and that we will properly scrutinize it the way we should have back in October.
Well,
doesn't it really become his property at once we give it to him?
I was going to mention that raises a lot of issues, which I will be very happy to further research and return with my best advice to you. But as Commissioner Reeves pointed out, I'm not so certain that we have any right to demand that email back.
I think what the best we can do in that situation is identify those emails. Those emails have numbers attached to them on how we identify them. We can write him a nice letter, say these are the emails we feel that should have been personal, and ask him not to use them. I think that's about that's just asking him to honor that. That's the best I think we can do.
Well, then it's left up to him. But
That's right.
Madam Chair, let me say a couple of things. One, I want to thank Commissioner Womack for his open public apology. Come on, give him a bump.
Oh,
all right.
fist bump there.
Having said that, I want to make sure that it's very clear. The folks at fault here, in my opinion, is this board. These public records information requests have been coming in for a little while. And we failed to recognize that we needed a process in place by which we respond. And we didn't. That's not staff's fault, that's this board's fault. Just like these maps up here. And they said, we had all these meetings and you didn't come, so you shouldn't be able to say anything. Hell, I shouldn't. Okay,
no, we didn't say that.
Well, that's pretty much what you said. But here's the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. If a public records request for any commissioner is received before anything goes out, that commissioner should have the opportunity to review whatever is being requested at any given time before it goes out of here, would be my position, because I think that's only fair. Secondly, in this situation with Ms. Barber, and I don't have a clue what all this is about. Not a single clue. But what I do know is what's right is that she gets the same thing that she has received after staff has gone through it. And then after each member of this board is made aware of what we're talking about and what's going to be shared out there in the public, and then move with the advice of counsel in the direction he recommends. I just think that we're on thin ice if we start thinking about not giving her the same things that we've already done, regardless of who you want to say was at fault. Doesn't matter. It's out there.
I agree totally.
So there's a motion on the table. Charlie, you still there? Okay. Commissioner Walbeck has a motion on the table to,
That was a long motion.
I'm going to shorten it here. I'm going to shorten it. The motion is to have the county attorney and staff review the same CD that was given, the files that were given to Mr. Clark, create another CD, and issue it with appropriate redactions and reductions in emails that are not releasable to Miss Barber at no cost to her.
you hear that, Charlie?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, now, Mr. Clark got his free of cost.
Yes, he did.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Okay. John, did you have anything else in your manager's report?
I think that's enough.
Okay. Commissioners' comments. Mr. Pascal? Mr. Hayes?
Well, yeah, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Commissioner Walmart for his public apology to the county attorney and the county manager. I appreciate that, and let's just get on down the road now with county business.
Speaking of county business, there is a binder that I brought back from Raleigh last Thursday. Went to the shale gas presentation up there. There were 5 other Lee County representatives that were there and present. I just want to tell the public that I was very impressed with the fact that Sanford and Lee County was right on the map. It was the first words out of the presenter's mouth when we showed up at the presentation. It was the last thing discussed in the presentation that day. Lee County is going to be at the hub of shale gas extraction in North Carolina. And we're on the map, and there are hundreds and hundreds of prominent people in the state that are watching Lee County and expecting us to be leading the way for the rest of the state in this business. This binder I brought back, I'm going to provide to the attorney and to the county manager so that they can review the recommended regulatory oversight procedures that were given to us by the American National Standards Institute and the American Petroleum Institute. This was given to us free of charge, and it's hundreds of dollars worth of regulations and that sort of thing that they normally charge for. But as given to all of the representatives that went up to the meeting. I just want to say about this, that there's a lot of sensitivity in the public. There's a lot of concern that we're going to be destroying the environment or harming people in some way or well water. I just want to tell you that we're not about to undertake this with our eyes closed or blinders on. I'll promise you faithfully that there are a lot of people, and to include Lee County citizens, who are on top of this business now, that hydraulic fracturing and shale gas extraction will be done as cleanly, as efficiently, as environmentally sound as humanly possible, and that I would just ask that people get involved as announcements are made about committee, about hearings. If Ms. Conlon conducts any more out at the McSwain Center, I'm sure that those notices will go out through the extension and her resources. But people need to get involved, need to stay informed, and don't believe everything you see on a Google search on fracturing. Okay, what you need to do is immerse yourself in what's going on locally and find out the facts and talk to people who have actually been involved in this industry. And you'll find out there's going to be a huge transformation for this county over the next 3 or 4 years. And we've got a good start on it now. We've got some really important people that are involved, and it's going to be a great start.
Oh, may I add just one comment to that? This Wednesday night at 5 o'clock, I would like to remind you that the Environmental Affairs Board will be meeting, and Mr. Crumpton and Mr. Hagler are coming. This is a good group of people, well-intended, no axe to grind. And Jim Foster's the chair, and they're an appointed board by this group, the commission. They want to inform these managers of the concerns of this group of people so that we are beginning to get baseline information and data so that we do this right and that we take advantage of problems. Questions like not to get at it tonight, where does all this water come from? Where will all the wastewater be taken? What about infrastructure? What about cost? What about royalties? Who gets paid what? How do we recover the expenses that we might go through? Lots of questions that this group has brought up, and we said, the county manager and the city manager, among others, should really be on point with this and helping us to begin to say what's good and what's bad and what's indifferent in this whole process. So it's a public meeting, and if anybody wishes to come, it's over at the City Hall in the boardroom. Not the boardroom, the West Wing,
West End Conference Room.
West End Conference Room, 5 o'clock this Wednesday.
The staff committee that we put together here to begin collecting data for the board is meeting with them on Wednesday. So I've just felt that the two groups working together would work well together.
Some of you might know and some of you might not, but I was talking to Donnie Odom, chairman of the EDC, and he's actually been to Bradford, Pennsylvania. He spent some time up there. And everyone ought to talk to him. I mean, all I heard was positive.
Well, last week, Representative Stone took members of Diener up to Pennsylvania. They met with Diener's, Pennsylvania's Diener. And a lot of the misconceptions, a lot of the questions you just asked were answered up there. And I think North Carolina Diener came back with a whole lot different perspective that this probably is really going to work in North Carolina.
0% unemployment in Bradford County.
Yeah, they have one of the highest unemployment rates in the state back when they started 8 years ago. Now they're the place everybody wants to go to. Yeah.
And as far as the baseline data, we're already having our wells tested in Lee County, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of that baseline data already taking place. And so, and Mr. Stone also said that Lee County is a whole lot more ahead of where they are there because they don't have the road structure we have there. They literally have these dirt roads that you have to use to get back to places. So I'll be looking forward to those updates as they come. Commissioner Reeves, did I ask you for your...
No, I was waiting on you
Okay.
to do that. Let me ask you a question about Bradford, Pennsylvania. Did they do an incentive on that?
No, in fact, they did just the opposite. They don't even have severance taxes up there. They really incentivize countries.
Is it North Dakota or South Dakota? They're thinking about eliminating property taxes now.
Yeah.
Shell Oil Company spent $400,000 of their own money to construct these roads into these. And from what he told me, it's not what I visualized. These are like little independent industries sitting around. It's not a well on everybody's yard, and it's not a well on everybody's property, but he told me this was just a neat operation, what he saw. And I don't.
Charlie, do you have any comments?
Yeah, that's right. I'll get it up.
Okay. I have just one I want to make, and I just want to say we have a lot of talented teens in Lee County. I went to a Boys and Girls Club function on Friday night, and the Temple teens performed. One of them is Mr. Crumpton's daughter, Molly. She was there. And Mr. Clark's stepdaughter was also performing there, and she sang one of my favorite Patsy Cline songs. And so I just want to say that we have some really talented young teens here. I was blown away with the music and whatever. And their fundraiser is when, John?
This Saturday night, the 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be out of town and not able to attend, but I'm going to send Peggy Tapmore a check because I was so impressed. And I don't know whether Temple Teens has a separate fund or not, but I thought, wow. And those little kids at the Boys and Girls Club really loved it. You know, it gave them something to aspire to. So.
Madam Chair, could I just redirect one point? You just hit on the Temple Theater, and I just wanted to remind everyone that they're having their fundraiser on February 11th. And my wife and I are going, and I expected to see I know you're going to be out of town, but I expect to see all the other commissioners there. I hope that they'll pick up the challenge and come to help Temple Theater out, because I know they need the money. And I'm going to be there with my checkbook, and I'm hoping that other folks will show up as well.
Hey, Doc?
Yes, ma'am. I move that we go into closed session to consider personnel matters per North Carolina General Statute 143-318, 11A6.
Okay. Motion has been made. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.